Good evening. Happy Valentine's Day. Let me call to order the regular meeting of the St. Helena City Council for February 14th, 2017. Ms. Koberstein, would you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Galbraith?
Present.
Vice Mayor White?
Here.
Council Members Doring?
Here.
Ellsworth?
Here.
Koberstein?
Here.
All right, the next matter on our agenda is public forum. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address us with respect to matters of municipal concern that are not on our agenda. We limit public comment to 3 minutes. Does anybody wish to speak at public comment?
My name is George Kalianidis, 2202 Diamond Mountain Road, Calistoga. Honorable Council, on October 2015, I stood here and made you aware of a private helicopter landing permit application on Hagen Road in Napa, making its way through the county. There is no doubt that if this one permit is granted, the first, hundreds will follow, and San Helena will find itself with helicopters crisscrossing its skies to surrounding county homes by wealthy homeowners and by doubtless to emerge helicopter taxi services. I had asked you to consider sending a letter to the county objecting not to this specific permit, but to any private use helicopter landing permits over which the county has jurisdiction. At the time, I had received a call from Mayor Galbraith advising me that due to a relative residing close to the Hagen Road site, he had a conflict of interest in taking a position, so no action was taken. Be that as it may, it seems to me that such conflict should not prevent the council, which represents the interests of the town, from taking a position from what many believe is poised to become an intolerable noise environment. To date, we have some 600 petition signatures against, several from this town. The application is due to be considered by the County Planning Commission in the next few weeks, so time is of the essence for you to act if you deem it to be in the town's interest. This is very serious. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further public comment?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Council. I'm Jan Flynn from 30 Redondo Court in St. Helena, and I'm using this opportunity because there really isn't another opportunity to speak tonight. I understand that. My issue tonight is actually with the agenda itself. And there may be some requests to move an agenda item up further on the agenda than where it currently is. I am confident that many of the people that are here in the audience tonight are here because of an item which appears very far down the agenda, and that would be item 10.4. I would respectfully request that the mayor and vice mayor consider moving that agenda item up a great deal further in the earlier in the agenda. It's Valentine's Day, and a lot of us have given up our evenings to be here. We have also been here on previous evenings where, for the same issue, where the same item appeared very far back on the agenda. I'm a little concerned that that's beginning to send the wrong message. So that is my respectful request. I hope you'll entertain it. And so that those of us who are here for that issue can get out of your hair. Thank you.
Yeah. We gave careful consideration to the placement of items on the agenda, and I'm hopeful that we will move rather rapidly through the agenda this evening. Of course, it's always hard to predict, but
I think we should take her up on that and move it forward at an early opportunity. I know we have rules on that, but I think we can get council consent to move that up to our earliest opportunity.
Where would you move it to?
Either right before or right after consent. Preferably right before consent. I mean, there are a lot of people here for that item. That's the only reason. I think it is a matter of convenience. And
All right, we will move it up, and we will put it before the consent calendar. And I would ask that as we do this, keep in mind we've got other issues relating to the Water and Wastewater Funds coming up that are very important in the agenda this evening. So I'm hopeful that those that are speaking to it in the context of 10.4 will stick around and listen to the discussions that we have on the other items affecting our facilities. They are serious. All right. That takes us to, any further comment at public forum?
I wanted to agree with Jan Flynn, but you've taken care of that. Thank you. But I also wanted to say that I sincerely agree with Mr. George Kalianides. I hope you give this serious consideration. Thank you.
Okay.
thank you.
Mary Stevenson, our town, St. Helena. I would request that you do the consent calendar first because it will take probably 3 minutes, and then those of us who have something on the consent calendar can go home. Thank you.
Here is my compromise proposal, that we take the consent calendar 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, and 8.5. Then we'll go to the other item, and then we'll come back. And that's going to put, if 8.6 is pulled from consent, which I think it will be, that will put that discussion after the discussion on water and wastewater rates.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I had a question about 8.5.
Yes, so do I. So it will be pulled.
Both of them.
8.5 will be pulled, but my suggestion would be that we hear 8.5 before
10.4.
Before 10.4,
Okay.
because 8.5 is a serious matter for us, and I think it will provide an opportunity to talk a little bit about our wastewater system at that point, as it's appropriate background for, quite frankly, 10.4. Okay, then let's proceed to reports by staff and city council, future agenda items. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council met in closed session on January 26, 2017, to discuss several items. Under the Brown Act, California's open meeting law, the City Council is required to report out certain actions that are deemed to be reportable under the Brown Act. There were 3 actions taken by the City Council on January 26 that are considered to be reportable. And the first one was a settlement agreement. The City Council agreed to a settlement agreement with the Spring Mountain Vineyard with respect to the payment of certain back-billed water cost payment matters. That settlement agreement is available to the public to review on request simply by contacting the city clerk. In addition, as to 2 other matters, the City Council did make the decision to initiate litigation. However, the direction from the City Council was to initiate litigation if it was deemed necessary after negotiations, as to those matters, if and when that litigation is initiated, copies of those lawsuits will be made available to the public upon request. Finally, the City Council approved a settlement agreement in a matter involving a short-term rental violator at 130 Reed Court in the city of St. Helena. That settlement agreement also is available to any member of the public upon request. I'd also note that the city issued a press release with respect to that matter last week, and that press release was published in the St. Helena Star.
Okay. Let's see. Mr. Pinnell, any report?
Mr. Mayor, I do have one item that is of interest, I'd like to announce the elevation of Erica Allman-Smithies to the position of Acting Public Works Director and City Engineer effective March the 3rd. She'll be replacing departing Public Works Director Steve Palmer, who is moving up to El Dorado County to take a position with the Georgetown Divide Public Utility District.
Okay, very good. Welcome to your promotion, Erica. Thank you. Ms. Mitz?
I wanted to inform the public that the first billing coming out with the new utility rates, the bills were processed. We went through them, literally every single bill yesterday, to try to ensure the accuracy on the bills. So it was quite an endeavor yesterday with 3 of the staff members. The bills will be mailed out tomorrow. They are available online this afternoon. So if you would like to take a look at them. And I did just want to make a general comment regarding the utility, the increase for primarily residential. The average, it looked like, from going through all the bills, is about $30 to $40 per bill for residential billing. So I wanted to kind of make everyone aware of that. If you do see anything on your bill and you notice any discrepancies, give us a call, come in. Also be patient with our staff, because we are anticipating a lot of phone calls, but we want to be able to help address any issues that members of the public might have with their bills. In addition, I wanted to mention, if you want to book it in your calendars, our budget hearings and our budget workshops have been set. The first meeting is on May 2nd. It is a Tuesday, and it will be at the Firehouse. That is our anticipated place right now, from approximately 9 a.m. to about 4 p.m. And if necessary, we'll have a second meeting on Tuesday, May 30th at the Firehouse as well.
All right. Ms. Black? Ms. Crichton? I think I saw you back there. Chief in Bowdoin, do you have anything? All right. Ms. Smithies?
Yes. Tomorrow, Public Works will be holding an ADA evaluation and transition plan workshop at the fire station. It is a walkthrough with different stations, so you can see what the city's been working on and trying to make ADA transition improvements in the city. We welcomed feedback from the public, and would like to have council members and the mayor show up if you'd like. It's between 5 and 7:30 p.m. at the city's fire station. There's no set meeting or talk. It's just walk through the stations and see the plan that we've rolled out. It's also available on the city website. In addition to the ADA transition plan, we are opening bids tomorrow for the Charter Oak and Allison overlay project. So we're hoping to get bids under budget so we can come back to the board in 2 weeks, or the council, and get authorization to proceed with construction.
Okay, very good. Mr. Hausch?
I'd just briefly like to announce that the Planning and Community Improvement Department has filled our permit technician position. So many of you may have noticed our short staff at the front counter lately. Since mid-October, we've been down that position. We have filled it, and Sophia Johnson will be starting on the 21st. It's a Tuesday, and we're happy to have her aboard and looking forward to having a full department staff.
Oh, very good. Okay. Members of the council, Mr. Doring, do you have anything?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Mr. White?
I just wanted to mention that I have submitted a request to have the county helicopter issue agendized for the February 28th meeting, if possible.
Good. I'm delighted you did so.
I just have one item, following up on our goal-setting session and the comments about the helicopter. I'd like to request that in March we agendize a discussion of a review of our noise ordinance and potential amendments to it, possibly for direction to the Planning Council to look at it. We're getting into the summer season, which is the noise season in many respects, and reviewing the ordinance and some of the comments we've seen and our zoning ordinance, I have some concerns that we may be permitting noise in districts where our zoning ordinance doesn't allow us to do so. So I'd like to take that up in March, have the chief advise us of the permits that are out there, and then figure out how we would like to proceed, if that's the wish of the full council.
All right. The mayor has nothing, so I think the next item on our agenda is the proclamation. And let me go read it. Mr. Ryan, you're coming up.
Mr. Mr. Mayor, this is Pam Dodson.
Nice to
She makes our program work.
Okay, very good. Excellent. So, our proclamation is for American Heart Month. Whereas the month of February has been proclaimed by the President of the United States of America as American Heart Month. Whereas over 400,000 Americans die from heart disease each year, more than breast cancer, lung cancer, prostate cancer, and AIDS combined, and whereas over 90% of those suffering sudden cardiac arrest die before reaching the hospital, and whereas chances of survival are increased dramatically if cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR, and automated external defibrillator, AED, resources are available and utilized within the first 3 to 7 minutes after sudden cardiac arrest, and whereas the goal of the American Heart Month is to raise awareness of heart disease prevention and treatment, whereas it is appropriate to increase awareness of the value of CPR training and encourage placement of AEDs in public places, and whereas the American Heart Association and the Napa County Emergency Medical Services Agency advocate the chain of survival, which represents the 5 crucial links of emergency treatment of sudden cardiac arrest. The links are early access to care, early CPR, early defibrillation, effective advanced life support, integrated post-cardiac arrest care. Whereas City of St. Helena is committed to strengthening the links in the chain of survival and supports widespread CPR training and public access defibrillation and heart-safe community programs, and now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Alan Galbraith, Mayor of the City of St. Helena, do hereby proclaim February as American Heart Month, encouraging all residents of the City of St. Helena to learn the risks of cardiovascular disease, to stay fit through exercise and good nutrition, to know the signs of stroke, heart attack, and sudden cardiac arrest, to learn critical life-saving skills such as CPR and AED use, to call 911, to act in time when a cardiovascular emergency occurs, and encouraging our community to become a heart-safe community. Very good. Thank you. Would you like to say a word or two?
Go ahead, Pam.
Sure, why not? I think what the proclamation says is that it's important that we, as community members, recognize cardiovascular emergencies such as heart attack, strokes, and cardiac arrest, and that we understand their time sensitive, and that we know to call 911 so that we can get help on the way, and hopefully we will take care of ourselves, not only recognizing those symptoms of things like stroke and heart attack and not waiting around to see if they get better, but actually calling 911 right away, knowing that our fire and ambulance can provide care that we would get in the hospital on our way there, and that cardiac arrest is treated most effectively by immediately dialing 911, starting CPR, and using a defibrillator if there's one available. So I just would encourage you all to take advantage of any training that we're doing in the community and the fire department's doing, and to learn CPR and where your AEDs are in this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. There you go.
Thanks.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is a staff briefing, and it will be done by Ms. Black, as I understand it. It deals with our website rollout.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm delighted to present this item on behalf of IT and HR Director Kathy Robinson. She's prepared a few words for me to share. The new website rollout will be tomorrow. It's going to go live at 10 a.m. And just to point out, the request to get a new website was unfunded for fiscal year 2016-17, as it was estimated to be between $75,000 and $100,000. City staff still needed to be able to make changes to the website, and the ability and functionality to do so was limited, as there was no contractual support with the vendor who did the city's current website. The new website, based on a Drupal platform to which the current site was built on, was not designed for an average person to make changes. As it stands, city staff is unable to make any modifications to the main page without having to contact the original vendor. City staff was in search for a vendor for Drupal support when former Town of Ross town manager Rob Brolick introduced us to Ad Hoc Consulting, who was able to do their new website for significantly less. The city received a quote for less than $10,000, which not only included a new website look and feel, but direct training with staff, complete with online training manual and videos, all of which we never had for the current website, and a user interface that is intuitive and easy for the average person to use. Tonight, we wanted to show you the new website and highlight some features. First, I would just like to point out that we feel like this is a much cleaner look, and I just want to point out, if you look at the top scrolling bar, that's going to be a bar for announcements, emergencies, and messages that we directly want to get out to the citizens. And I just want to point out, not only does it scroll, but we can also choose the scrolling information, and it will take you directly to the information that we're wanting to provide to the community. And just to point out, this is a new website. It's still work in progress. We are doing updates, and we're all very excited to share it with the community, and also it's going to be a very great tool for staff as well. So I would really encourage the community to look around. If you have any constructive comments to make, please direct them to Kathy Robinson, and her email address is included in this area. I just want to point out, too, if I go back to the home page, we've broken out some of the main links: your government, agendas and minutes, city attorney, council, our municipal code. We can go over to our community. It gives information on the city of St. Helena, community news, and various other related items. For direct access to city departments, you just simply go to city departments, and you have the ability to choose which department you want to visit. Something that I want to point out as well is over on the left-hand side, you're going to have an easy direct link to contact us, which you'll have a directory of staff, newsletters, jobs, forms, and permits. So directly on the front page, you should get direct access to the commonly used links. Also, I would like to point out that we have a calendar of events that you can visit, and then again, you can also go to all meetings and agendas here. So I encourage everyone, or Kathy encourages everyone to look around, and she really hopes the community finds the atmosphere more user-friendly, more accessible, and again, just remember this is still work in progress, and we're just real anxious to be able to have a platform, a better platform that we can deliver information to, not only staff in the community, but just really have it evolve.
Okay.
And with that being said, if you have any questions, I can direct them to Kathy.
Well, I'm sure we all may have questions once we start trying to use it. So, but in any event, good progress. Thank you very much. All right, that takes us to our consent items, and I'm going to go through consent items 8.1 through 8.4. Again, if any member of the public or any member of the council wishes to pull any of those consent items, that will be done. With respect to 8.1, that's consideration proposed approval of special and regular meeting minutes with the notation that Ms. Black has provided amended regular meeting minutes for January 24 and February 4. 8.2, consideration proposed approval of resolution setting a hearing to approve the annexation of territory into the St. Helena Municipal Sewer District Number 1 at 1486 Sulphur Springs Avenue. 8.3, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement between the City of St. Helena and Califa Group for the provision, installation, and maintenance of advanced data services for the library. 8.4, consideration proposed approval of a resolution relating to the development of our town, St. Helena, of the former city property located at 684 McCorkle Avenue. And with that, there's an updated resolution. So, at this point, the chair would invite a motion to approve consent items 8.1 through 8.4.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Black?
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Doring?
Yes.
Ellsworth?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. And that takes us to 8.5. I've requested that staff pull this item, and we'll go through the normal report. My main concern here is both time frame and how we're financing it, and what the implications could be for the city in terms of risk.
Thank you. Yes, we've already submitted a request for an extension to the Water Board to push it out to May, and they've agreed to the extension for the deadline. And the cost, we're trying to also keep the state, they're trying to expand the analysis of the city plant and the upgrades and the feasibility study, and we're trying to keep them in the box with it, because there is, the comment was made by Steve today was paralysis by analysis, and we really need to move forward. So we have some serious problems out the plant, as everyone's aware, and we need to get moving on infrastructure and get this feasibility final so we can get the application going and get the design started on the upgrades at the plant.
But this particular item relates to the spray field, and an order from the Regional Water Quality Control Board to take a look at the spray field. As I understand it, my further concern is that we did not budget for this item in the last round of rate increases, I don't think. And my question is whether we have serious exposure with respect to the spray field, or perhaps we just don't know at this point.
We don't know at this point because they're asking for the additional analysis. We do know that there was an increased cost that was not included in the rate study. We got an estimate of 1.4 after the rate study to do the improvements to the spray fields.
1.4 million.
Mm-hmm. So they are actually, the board's actually looking to trying to get us to do expansion and do wetland review to see if we can implement wetlands in our spray fields. But we only have a limited number of acres out there, approximately 80 acres, and putting a wetland in will increase the cost exorbitant and would reduce our ability to spray out in those fields. So that's why we're trying to hone in and maybe make a meeting with the chief of the water board above our current level report to make sure that we can stay on track.
Okay. Any further follow-up questions?
I have one question. It just the report from the staff principally addressed the spray fields, but the letter from the water board also addressed other items that they wanted in the final feasibility study. So that's also been extended to May 1st?
Yes.
Great. Thanks.
All right. Any further questions by council members at this point? Does any member of the public wish to speak to this item? All right. I'll close the public hearing with respect to it and
Move approval.
entertain a motion to approve 8.5. All right.
Second.
Sorry. Ms. Black?
Councilmember Doring?
Yes.
Koberstein?
Yes.
Ellsworth?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. Okay, and now we're going to move to 10.4. This is an item placed on our calendar by Ms. Koberstein, and I think we're talking about 10.4A at this point.
Yes.
Okay, not 10.4B. That can be taken later. So let's go to 10.4A, and it relates to our last... Pardon? I said we would take the other item on consent after we do 10.4A. This is going to our last round of water and wastewater increases, which are taking effect. Oop. Okay. And obviously, we went through a very long process last year dealing with these difficult water and rate water increases. But in any event, let me turn it over to Ms. Koberstein since it's her item.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion, but before I do so, I think that the residents who are requesting this and those of us who support it, I think we all believe firmly that we're going to proceed under the status quo unless and until the rates are changed. The idea of undertaking an analysis is to accomplish the same objectives, but at a lower cost, which might end up reducing the rates. And if you could do that, in my mind, why wouldn't you do it? Finally, something that's been talked about very little is a perceived inequity issue in the rates between the residential customers and the industrial, which I think deserves analysis. I'm not an expert on Prop 18, but I would guess that that could be a potential Prop 218 issue that we ought to look at. So I'm going to make the following motion, and then we can discuss to the extent you want to. I move that the City Council appoint an ad hoc committee, including residents, to review the water and wastewater rate study and make recommendations to the Council, if any, for revisions to the adopted study and the adopted rate schedule, and that the Council retain a public sector financial consultant to advise the ad hoc committee on a couple of issues. Available financing options for the CIP projects in the first 5 years of the rate study, giving due consideration to their immediate need, number, and estimated costs, and other significant fiscal assumptions in the study, such as reserves and designated and undesignated fund balances based on generally accepted financial principles, and that the Council retain Hansford Consulting to work with the ad hoc committee to assist in an analysis of an apparent inequity between industrial and residential ratepayers and recommend corrective measures if required, and to generate alternative rate models. And finally, that this review and analysis of the water and wastewater rates be completed in a timely manner, such that if the Council determines to revise the rate study and the rates, the work will be completed in sufficient time to comply with Proposition 218 requirements and put new rates in effect as of the date of the currently proposed November 2017 increase.
All right. Does any member of the Council initially wish to speak to it before I open the public hearing? Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right. Is there any initial public discussion or council discussion? I think I will undertake a little initial council discussion because I think it's very important to understand our bond covenants. We actually have this set for our hearing in 2 weeks, and we will get a staff report with respect to that. So what I am going to say is unofficial. We will get a staff report. If necessary, we can have council weigh in on this as well. But my understanding is that on the water side especially, we are way out of compliance with our bond covenant. That's very serious. And what it means, among other things, is that even if we could reduce the rates, which I don't think at the end of the day is going to prove to be feasible at all, but even if we could, we cannot do it legally until such time as we come into compliance with our bond covenants. And my understanding is that's not going to happen until sometime in 2018 under the current rate increases at best on the water side. Now, again, all this is set for discussion in 2 weeks. But you also heard today that we may face very large additional costs that were not included in the rate study with respect to our spray fields, costs that could easily run over $1 million. Hopefully it won't happen that way. But my perception is that it's very difficult to believe that we will be able to reduce the rates. With respect to financing, as was clear in the rate study, the city is committed to looking at the lowest cost long-term financing with respect to major capital improvements. There's also, as I think we'll hear in 2 weeks, a limit on our capacity to borrow. All of these things were well thought through by Ms. Hanford, our rate consultant, who made presentations both to the Ad Hoc Revenue Committee and to the City Council back last fall. And of course, with respect to the long-term financing, to my understanding, but again, an expert perhaps needs to confirm this, the cheapest long-term solutions for us go through state bonds and state revolving funds. They're very low interest rates, and they're out there to help small cities. The private market, it would be far more expensive with far greater long-term consequences on all of us. So those are some of the preliminary considerations that I see. I have seen, quite frankly, no evidence that would justify a relook at what we did last fall. A relook, I don't remember at this point what we spent with respect to Hansford Consulting doing the rate study, but my belief is it was in the $80,000 range. Ms. Mitz, do you have that? $62,000. But in addition to that, there was a huge amount of staff time that was devoted to pulling together all the figures and costing out all the various things that we have to do. And that's just not going to change. So that's sort of my preliminary observation with respect to it. And again, in 2 weeks, we'll have a staff report, as was promised sometime back when this came up, where we hopefully will generate a better and more complete understanding of our bond covenants and just what they mean in terms of what we can do. But again, I want to underscore that I've been through this consulting report many times, and my best guess is that we are going to have expenses, as you heard just a few minutes ago, that are not included in these rates as we move out. And of course, I don't want to see another rate increase, and it may well be we have to look somewhere else. But both our systems are old, dilapidated, and in need of major improvements. We have a bond covenant that says we're going to maintain them in good repair. It's perfectly obvious that has not happened, and that's the fix we find ourselves in. So those are my preliminary comments.
I guess, I understand how the community's feeling with this rate increase, but I would agree with the mayor that I think we really vetted this for almost an entire year last year. Had Hansford consultants do the rate modeling, take a look at our financial situation and such. I would at the very least, like to postpone your motion and your proposed scenario going forward until after we've heard from staff on February 28th. I have not had a chance to look at your proposal. I don't know what costs are involved with it. I think we should have that information. I think maybe we can direct staff to take a look at the proposal, your motion, and vet out what the financial burden would be on the city to move forward with that. I'm not prepared to discuss this until we have more input from our staff that we had requested at our last, actually 2 meetings ago. And we were told by staff that it would take them until February 28th to come up with the information that we requested. So,
Ms. Dory, do you have any preliminary comments?
I do think if the motion is going to go forward that we should have a not-to-exceed price, some reasonable price, and I don't know what that number is. I agree with the mayor regarding the bond covenants. We have a lot of restrictions, but in the consultations I've had with people that I know in the industry, they really do recommend that we, to me, and I trust the people I've been talking to, very close friends who are very skilled in this area, bond counsel, that we undertake to get a municipal advisor who can discuss all of these issues, irrespective of the bond covenant issue. There are so many strategies available out there in California. We would be remiss if we overlooked them. So I think that is something that we can move forward on. Parts of me want to say, it's respectful and seems appropriate to wait for information from staff, but I think we need to move forward because time is urgent here in terms of the next rate increase in November. And so, in the back of my mind, I'm suggesting I don't think there's going to be anything new on the 28th that would convince me that we don't need a municipal financial advisor to at least look at the overall picture. I think it would be well worth our time and expense to do that. And, of course, expense is a concern of mine. So that would be my initial comments.
All right. Well, I don't want to put Ms. Mitz on the spot, but are there municipal financial advisors that are familiar with that sort of specialize in small cities and look at these studies and say, hey, here's what your consultant suggested as your ways of financing these projects, as between loans and bonds and cash financed, cash financed and so on. That for a second opinion, I guess that's what.
I do not have I don't have the name of anybody off the top of my head, but I can reach out through CSFMO. I have some different contacts that I can just put feelers out there and ask and see who other people have used. It's possible to find the information. I just don't know how quickly I can do it, but I can send an email out to. It's a listserv. I can send it out tomorrow and see what kind of response I get back and report on that on the 28th.
One recommendation that I heard from a 30-year bond counsel from San Francisco, is a close friend of mine, is a company called Del Rio Advisors. And you may know of Del Rio Advisor. Mr. Ken Deeker has been advising small cities for many, many years, is well respected in the industry. It's just one name that you can check out, Del Rio Advisors.
I will look into that, and then I'll also find out from my counterparts if they've undertaken it, what the approximate cost is, so that will determine if we have to go out for an RFP or not, depending on the cost.
All right. Any further initial comment?
I'm in support of reopening this and looking at it, getting a second opinion. I believe that citizens of this town are the people that we serve, the people we elected, and they deserve our every effort to turn every stone to make sure we're doing our best to stand up for them. I want to hear public comment, and then I have a few brief comments, but I want to hear public comment first.
All right. Let me open it up to public comment.
I'm speaking right now as a representative for the St. Helena residents for fair water and wastewater rates. I'm the chair of that committee, and the committee consists of myself, Andre Bryan, Tom Belt, Don Vence, and Grace Kistner. I have here a petition that's been signed by 812 residents of St. Helena, most of whom I'm sure are voters. I'm absolutely confident that we'll get between 50 and 100 additional signatures, but I thought this was the appropriate night to bring these forth. This petition says the undersigned persons want to inform the St. Helena City Council that the water and wastewater rates voted on at the November 29th, 2017 meeting are unacceptable and causing great hardship. Please find a way to reduce the rates and create equity between residential users and commercial users. So I will give these petitions to Ms. Black, And I will be coming in a couple of weeks with, I'm sure, 50 to 100 additional signatures. And then I also want to circulate again, I gave you a few weeks ago our alternative plan, the committee's alternative plan to what you've done with your study and your rate setting of the rates. And it's interesting that, by the way, I have enough copies tonight. Last time I circulated this, it didn't get all the way around, which caused some consternation. So I'm going to start it with Mary, and there are enough copies here for the city manager, Mr. Pinnell, and for Cindy Black as well. So I'll pass those out in a minute. It's interesting to me that our petition, excuse me just a minute, our plan agrees with one of your goals when you did the study. One of your goals, hard to read here, it's really small print, ensure equitable cost allocation. One of our goals, take critical look at wineries' new rate structure and determine equity with respect to residential customers. One of our goals, direct Public Works to negotiate with regulators with regulators to provide time to determine if enterprise funding issues requiring near-term funds until new funding approaches in place. So I'm delighted to hear that you got the extension. I know it was in March because I did do a public information request and get that document from the Water Quality Control District, and I know that it was in March, so I'm delighted to hear that you were able to extend it to May. So to the mayor, I'd like to direct a question. You keep saying that we're way out of compliance. I would like to know from you, what does that mean in dollars?
If you
not a percentage, but dollars.
Well, the staff will have a report in 2 weeks, but what I understand is that net operating revenues on the water side and on the wastewater side, and they are evaluated differently, must equal 120% of debt service.
Yeah.
So it's not dollars, it's a percent. And at the moment, we are far below that 120%.
I firmly believe that could be equated in dollars. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Dell.
Yes, you're welcome.
I'm Tom Vence, 22 San Lucas Court in St. Helena. And I just want to tell you why, what I'm not asking for. I'm not asking to revisit the rate review in any depth. No new rate review is in my agenda at all. Not asking to eliminate any projects that staff has identified. I'm sorry, my voice is... I'm only asking for the council and the mayor to consider exploring a funding mechanism, one that may smooth out the steep rate hike that kicked off on February 8th. And the reason we're here this evening is up there. It's the rate increases. And you can see in the city of St. Helena, this is from the study, so there are new numbers now, but it was initially a 24% rate increase in 2017, moving up to 85% in 2021. That's 1.85 what the rates were in 2016. And in Vineyard Valley, the rates kicked off at 49% of the 2016 rates. And in 2021, they were up 121%. That's 2.2 times what Vineyard Valley was paying in 2016. So this bar chart is hard to see, but what it shows basically is 10 years of CIP cash funding. Those are all cash fundings of over $400,000. They're not little projects. And you can see they peak in 2023. Actually, you can't see. It's too small. 2023 of almost $5 million in cash. And for the total through 2027, it's about $17 million in cash funding. And debt funding in that same period is about $11 million for debt. So we think there's a better way, at least we're asking you respectively to try to explore a better way to fund the CIP projects. And please approve Resolution 10.4. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pence.
Hello, I'm Bobby Monette, and I am speaking as a resident. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I was inspired. First of all, I wanted to say that I feel that Councilmember Koberstein's motion is very specific and covers all, many, if not all, of the concerns that have been brought up over the past several meetings that this has been an issue. And I appreciate it for that very much. And the confidence in the public confidence in what the ad hoc committee, the last ad hoc committee, did, and what the staff presented in terms of the original study is very low at this point. And I know that Councilmember Koberstein at the goal-setting meeting said something that was quoted by our fearless and very astute reporter, Jesse Duarte, in the paper, that what was missing on this issue was, and what was needed, was community buy-in. And to my mind, I think there is ample evidence that community buy-in is lacking at this point, and that is reason enough to relook into this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
George Kalianidis again. I was here in October of 2015 for the helicopters, and again on October 16 for the water issue. At the time, I had presented material about the 6 parcels that the enterprise owns around Bell Canyon. According to an analysis by a local broker who is very well versed and familiar with values, I looked at it. I'm an architect, and we're pretty sure that with the proper lot line adjustments, 3 to 4 beautiful lots can be created below the water level, so they would not impact the watershed. According to him, the value of those lots would be between $1.5 million and $2 million apiece. Now, you said you looked at everything, but although I had submitted this material, nobody looked at that. So we are looking at a potential capital there of $4 to $6 million, which would enable you, if you didn't want to sell those lots, at least to borrow against them. So I resubmit the material, and I hope whoever is further looking at that will not leave $4 million on the table. That would help you very much in funding this project and lowering the rates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Murphy, Sylvaner. I came in late, so I missed a little bit of what's going on, so maybe I'm going to repeat what somebody already said. But I just wanted to say that I walked 2 neighborhoods, rang over 200 doorbells, got 136 signatures. I got 2 rejections, and the major reply that I got back from the people was they were very upset with the rate hike and the amount that the rate hike was given, and they were also very upset because it was ramrodded through with a lame duck council at the last minute of the November 29th meeting. So I just wanted to, somebody might have already read this, but I have a copy of the letter sent to the city of St. Helena from the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Control on November 7th, 2016. And it says in the letter that we are in, the letter provides, I just read a few paragraphs. The letter provides notice the city of St. Helena is in violations of its water reclamation requirements. It requires the city to submit an updated report of waste discharge, to the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board, okay? It also says the final feasibility study must describe the city's outreach efforts and public participation in identifying a preferred option. We believe the public must be involved in the decision-making process, and we recommend that the city reach out to its community before making any final decisions. And then it says, we recognize that the original date was 2/16. We're extending that to March 1st, 2017. So in other words, according to this letter, all we need is a feasibility plan submitted by March 1st, 2017. So therefore, this rush to pass these rates, to me, was ridiculous. And we were at the November 29th meeting. We had as many people there as we have now. They all want to participate. We all want to help. We all want to get involved, and we were shut down. It was told to us at that meeting that we were going to be fined $1,000 a day if we didn't pass these rates and get this thing fixed immediately. Well, obviously, you don't need to fix it immediately because the letter says you've got till March 17th, excuse me, I've got a cold, to get this passed, to March 17th to present the feasibility study. So what I'm saying here is people are concerned. We want to work with the city. We'd like to work with the city. The city at this point is kind of not working with us. We want them to work with us. We want to get this thing resolved. And as you can see, these people here have studies that there is ways to do it other than the way we voted on. So I would appreciate if you reconsidered this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Dale Grossman. I live on Granger Way. Yes. I'll pick the mic up. Thank you. The great Yogi Berra used to say, I don't want to make the wrong mistake. The water infrastructure project that our city will undertake is a very complicated endeavor. Mistakes will be made, and that's okay. Our group is concerned that the wrong mistakes will be made, and these mistakes could have major impact on our city, the citizens of St. Helena, and on City Council itself. We're looking to point out these issues before the wrong mistakes are made. Tonight I'll be presenting summarized information from the Hansford Report. We'll discuss the feasibility of the project schedule and its implications with rating agencies and bond investors. Additionally, we'll touch on the chill on housing prices that may occur by funding these projects with operating funds. Additionally, we'll speak about a concern related to surpluses that this plan will create. Better than me. All right. A little tough to read here, but in this slide, I've summarized the project's implementation schedule. The city is looking to start 43 capital projects in the next 5 years. It's a 10-year report. They're showing 5 in the second 5 years. Of that 43, 23 of them are scheduled to be started in the next 2 years. This is what's driving the run-up in rates. When you change the timing, the rate increases kick in later. It's pretty straightforward. Where we're paying as you go, and if you go later, you pay later. We are not looking to defer or omit any specific projects. We're simply pointing out the ambitious schedule detailed in the report. By approving this schedule, Council is affirming they are comfortable the city has the resources, staffing, and expertise to manage this load. I have an extensive background working with bond investors and rating agencies. I'll tell you how these groups may view the consultant's recommendations. In seeing these schedules, these groups may think the city's acknowledging they'll let things get away. That's because an ambitious schedule needs to be undertaken in a short period to make things right. They may press the city to get them comfortable that the city has the expertise and staffing to accomplish this. Upgrades and downgrades are driven by information like this. Additionally, if forward-looking statements have been provided to our existing debt, the impact of this schedule should be weighed against the previous forward-looking statements. Now we'd like to talk about a concern related to the surpluses that the plan will create.
Your time has expired. We allow 3 minutes. Does anybody wish to?
Yeah.
Does
someone else will cede me some time?
Sure.
Is that what we do? There you go.
All right. Fair enough.
Thank you most kindly.
Go ahead.
I'm Anthony McKelly. He has my 3 minutes.
Okay. Excellent.
Thanks, Anthony.
Quite permitted by our rules.
All right. I realize this is tough to read. For Council's benefit, this is page 57 of the Hansford report. It appears that revenues are going to exceed expenses in the out years for both the water and wastewater projects. We're going to have surplus revenue. The water projects are going to go surplus in 2024, and that's, trust me on that there. Go to page 57 for this. Wastewater in 2020. This slide's on the water project. Instead of providing rate relief, the report recommends a capital projects fund be created to capture the surpluses after the reserves are funded. The report indicates this money can be used for future cash funding of system rehabilitation. In 2027, the fund is projected to have a balance of $6.9 million. That's overfunded by 6.9. Time is tight, but it'll take a second to tell you how it works. And for anyone who could see this, follow me. Otherwise, check it out at home or get in touch with me. I'm going to look at 2025. In 2025, the ending balance equates to 15 months of reserves. Can you see that there? I'd like Council to be able to focus on that part there. It's 15 months of reserves. So $1.3 million is put aside in the fund, which leaves 12 months of reserves. Once all the projects are paid for, we start generating some serious surpluses. This actually lays out better in a graph. I'm going to start with the graph you saw in November here. This is from the November 29th Council meeting. You had seen this. I would euphemistically call this graph that we're up a well-known waterway with no means of propulsion. That's what this graph says. I'm going to give you a little trick of the trade in the financial analysis business. If the report has a 10-year horizon and they're showing you 5-year graphs, ask more questions. You got a 5-year graph up there. We're not talking about what's happening after 2022. We're in luck. I've got it. Last one. The blue line is what that relates to the surpluses. It is the green and the red line are what we're being told the balances are and what the target balance. We're in actuality, we're going to be the blue line. We are generating serious surpluses. And this is happening because the schedule is being front-loaded, the projects are all on the front end, and it's on a pay-as-you-go. After you paid for them, you've freed up serious cash. If you think that's steep, it's only going to get steeper in future years. This goes up to, we're generating over $2 million of surplus a year. It comes and goes depending on what it is, but there was a $2 million a year in there. So we're creating a pretty tidy nest egg, and the official number says we have 12 months of reserves, but it's 12 months plus $6.9 million. It's a designated fund for undesignated projects. As you can see, once this gets rolling, it really picks up speed. At the November 29th council meeting, it was indicated that rates could potentially be lowered once the program was adequately funded. How does this fund square with the council's indication that rates may be lowered? That's a rhetorical question. Last but not least, I want to talk about the potential negative impact on housing prices in St. Helena from using operating funds to finance the program. Having our water rates among the highest, if not the highest, in Napa County can act as a drag on housing prices. Other towns will use this to sell against St. Helena. While the impact of higher monthly water bills can be measured in the hundreds of dollars, the impact on home values is measured in thousands and tens of thousands of dollars. We're asking City Council if the impact of rate increases on housing prices has been considered. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Tom Belt. I live on Hillview Place. I'll be short. One of the things that I heard discussed up here this evening was the cost of this new rate study, if there's going to be much of a cost. And I'd like to point out that it almost sounded like the city's paying for this. The thing is that the water rate customers are going to be paying for it. And it's not coming out of the city's pocket. It comes out of the water enterprise. So I was instrumental in also taking around the petition. And Mr. Galbraith, I heard you. I was sitting in the audience. I know you believe in your heart that you gave the public in this city an ample opportunity to talk about these rates. But I really disagree with you. I really believe that most of the people, had they known that we were going to be looking at such high rates, would have liked to have made comment.
I think it's best to address the entire council. That's more appropriate.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
But, okay, I do apologize. But I do believe that the public of St. Helena, had they known that there was going to be this significant of a rate increase, you would have had a lot of people at those meetings where you say there weren't anyone, and I know I've streamed them on my computer, and I know there weren't many people there. But when you're looking at that kind of a rate hike, I'm sure a town hall meeting or something to try and get the public involved and invested would have been the most appropriate way to take that on. So anyway, I would just like to take this minute to thank the City Council for taking this into consideration, to give us another opportunity to voice our concerns and to ask questions and hopefully get some answers to our questions as to why the rates have to be so high, because I don't think we were given that opportunity in the past as far as really having a dialogue. So thank you to the City Council.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belt.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne James, and I'm from 32 Redondo Court. In my last life, I was a psychologist. I was in private and public practice for over 30 years. And during that time, it became so obvious, and it was pummeled into me, be sure you have the right diagnosis. And how do you get the right diagnosis? You gather information, you get history, you do testing, you reach out to other experts if you have some questions. And unless you have all of that, you're not going to be able to come up with the appropriate treatment. And not having the appropriate treatment leaves you wide open to malpractice. So, it's very important. Now, how does that relate to the issue that we're talking about tonight? I think more information is needed. I, as a citizen, have been going to meetings and listening and really pondering on all of this. And I like your motion and would support that we need a broader committee looking at some of these issues and getting a financial expert. Another important psychological learning is the importance of open loops in communication. It's been proven time and time again, the more open the loop, the more the voices, especially on difficult issues, the better the decision making. That it's very dangerous to go to closed loops in communication. Ask John Kennedy about the Bay of Pigs. That's an excellent example of closed loop. There weren't enough voices. So I appreciate the council listening to consumers and residents, and hope they will pass Councilmember Koberstein's motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? All right. I'll close public comment and invite further council discussion. Mr. Doring?
Oh, I'm just passing along copies of my motion since it was rather lengthy.
I don't have anything further. I'm ready to vote.
All right.
I would like to see the proposal, since this is the first time I'm actually seeing it.
All right. Mr. Ellsworth, you said you'd have some comments?
I'm ready to vote as well, so I think I'll just hold my comments.
Call the question.
Well, let me just make a comment here, and that is that I certainly believe strongly that this motion should be deferred until we hear from city staff on February 28th. And I would say that the one item in this motion that I would not oppose, assuming we can come up with the right person, would be a municipal financial advisor that can take a look through what we've done and see whether there are financing alternatives that reduce the cost to the city. I'm skeptical, but I certainly have an open mind that if there is such a person working with Ms. Hansford, I don't think it's appropriate to appoint an ad hoc committee at this point in time. I think that if we go down the road of more expertise, the experts should be working with the city staff, and there should be no effort by any resident with a stake in the outcome to influence the process. It should be very neutrally oriented. So I would vote against the motion at this point in time.
Yeah, I would like to again reiterate that I think to just have this come before us without us having a chance to actually see it and understand what is being presented to the council, and without having any staff input, really have a problem with just going with this motion. I do agree with a number of the items. I mean, I'm fine with getting a financial advisor, and if the financial advisor believes that the rate, I mean, if the Hansard Consulting Group needs to be brought back on board to do some modeling, I could agree with that. But to just have this thrown at me and brought up for the first time without any kind of information behind it, except for, what the public has come up and said. And I would like to postpone this until our next meeting so we have a chance to actually take a look at this, have some more information, and be able to actually intelligently pass this or revise it to the council's satisfaction. So,
All right, any further discussion?
I just think that we can vote on it now and adjust as we go forward. I don't think it really precludes us from making adjustments with new information. The question is getting new information and moving forward from there. I think it's going to evolve as we get more information. So that's the point of, I think, moving forward quicker than later for me.
All right. Ms. Black?
Councilmember Koberstein.
Yes.
Ellsworth.
Yes.
Doring.
Yes.
Vice Mayor White.
No.
Mayor Galbraith.
No. Okay. All right, let's see where we are here. Oh, 8.6. We're at item 8.6. And I understand that this is pulled. And so at this point, with respect to 8.6, the council on a 3-2 vote voted to overrule the Planning Commission and not allow the tasting room sought at 1234 Adams Street. It's back before us to approve a proposed order, but I can see that the matter is to be pulled, and so I would invite unless there's any further initial council discussion, we've been over it, I would... Pardon?
Who is pulling it?
Well, the reality is that I would pull it, and I would pull it because the resolution itself has, the way it's worded, has me and voting for it when I was voting against it. But that's a rather technical point. But I believe that the applicant wishes to pull it in any event. I see Mr. Russell standing.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Galbraith. I'd like to make a motion to pull the issue to continue to talk about the matter.
Yeah, it doesn't require a motion. Anybody can pull an item.
I am making that request then.
It's made. It's
Okay.
pulled.
Terrific. Since we did not have the opportunity in the last meeting to have a discussion regarding potential alteration of the project, we are asking the council to not only pull the project, but reconsider the project. And we have some suggested mitigations, which we believe will address many of the concerns that were brought up by the appellant as well as council in their deliberations. I want to stress that there are zoning laws in place in the city of St. Helena, and this is the central business district where this application is being applied for. In the central business district, tasting rooms are allowed with a conditional use permit. Can you bring up the exhibit that the first one? Let's do that one, yes, the first one, please. Cindy is bringing up the ABC map, which shows all the alcohol licenses currently in the city of St. Helena. There are currently 730 alcohol permits in the city of St. Helena. We heard that there are concerns regarding proximities to schools. Currently, there are 29 licenses within 600-foot radius of the Catholic school. There are 19 licenses within 600-foot radius of the Sun and Stars, and there are 7 licenses within 600 feet of the elementary school. This project, as proposed, will in no way further jeopardize the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of St. Helena. Further, no evidence has been provided by the appellant to support the notion that this project will negatively impact the surrounding land uses. That burden of proof is on the appellant to provide substantial evidence. The findings that you have in front of you must be supported by substantial evidence that is presented by the appellant that are specific to this project. In our last meeting, there was no evidence to support that the application was not local serving. There was no evidence in the record to support that this land use is incompatible with the surrounding land uses, and that this project will be injurious to the public. This resolution provided to you by the planning staff cannot be supported by substantial evidence, and that is what is required under CEQA in order to support a decision. This resolution fails to meet this standard. So, decisions cannot be arbitrary and capricious. Further, ABC law, which was brought up quite a bit in our last discussion, states that the law states the ABC may deny any retail license located within the immediate vicinity of churches and hospitals or within at least 600 feet of schools, public playgrounds, and nonprofit youth facilities. Generally, the ABC will deny a license in the above situations where there is evidence that normal operation of the licensed premise will be contrary to the public welfare and morals. Mere proximity by itself is not sufficient to deny the license, and that is why you have over 700 licenses in the city of St. Helena. In determining whether an issuance of a liquor license would be harmful to the general welfare or public morals, the Department of Alcohol Beverage Control is entitled to consider the applicant's integrity, as shown by his previous business experience, kind of business to be conducted on licensed premise, and probable manner in which it will be conducted. Types of guests and probability that the consumption of alcohol will be moderate, nature of protest will be made to the issuance of license, and conflict that use of licensing might have. In light of what has been stated, we heard the appellant and we heard the concerns that she brought up. We would like to offer some changes to our project to address these concerns.
Point of order.
Yes.
Don't we need a motion on the floor to reconsider? We don't have that.
I would move to reconsider if we need it. Do we need it, Mr. Brown?
Currently, what's before the council this evening is only the adoption of the findings reflecting the decision that was made tentatively at the last meeting on this. There is no public hearing open. It would be appropriate for the council to first make a determination, because this is not a public hearing, whether you want to allow the speaker to exceed your time limits and all speakers.
Okay.
But if the council is inclined not to adopt these findings as presented to you by staff, but rather to revisit the correctness of your decision previously, then yes, a reconsideration motion would be the appropriate vehicle to do that.
And sorry, I'm going to jump in.
Is that for both?
So
Excuse me?
To summarize,
Wait,
I just want to provide...
Just a minute, Ms. Koberstein, please.
Is a motion necessary even to amend the resolution? Is that what you're saying, to reconsider?
No. The city council has authority to
Right.
make changes to the resolution that are before you. This was staff's best effort at memorializing the decision that you articulated at the last meeting. So it would be appropriate for you, if you believe that either additions or revisions would be appropriate or to better memorialize the decision, then you can do that. That's properly agendized for that.
May I add, it's important to note that in order for it to be reconsidered, the motion must be made by a member who voted with the prevailing side, according to the council's bylaws.
Okay, so it can't be made by me or by the vice mayor. It has to be made by somebody else. All right.
It's the opposite. It's the opposite.
No, he said it can't be made by, it has to be made by.
All right, so By the way, in terms of the time, I thought this was a land use public hearing with the 15 minutes.
That public hearing was closed at the last meeting.
Okay, I got it. All right.
I thought it was continued.
Well, first of all, there's nothing to be done unless there's a motion for reconsideration. Is there a motion for reconsideration? All right. There being no motion for reconsideration, you may sit down, Mr. Russell. That precludes us from reconsidering it, and so the only issue before us is to vote to approve the proposed order. And my point there is that I voted against it, and Mr. White did, and the order should reflect that. That's all. It's just a procedural point.
Excuse me. I'd like to discuss something in the order.
Sure.
Not in the order.
Resolution?
Excuse me. In the resolution that I think was missing. I think this relates specifically to Standard J, which is at the bottom.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 494.
Thank you.
During the appeal, I did make the point that I thought part of the justification for allowing this and considering it semi-local serving and not redundancy in merchandise was upside down. Because the justification was that the wine was local and that each winery could only get one of these permits. But if you follow the logic of that, every winery could come and get one of these permits for a tasting room, and you'd have a cumulative effect that could just blow out of proportion. I'm not against tasting rooms, but I do think the location is important. And I particularly appreciated Councilman Doring's comments about what other communities do and what they take note of with respect to beverage serving locations that are nearby schools and other types of facilities like that. What I would like to add to J is the following language. Moreover, granting the use permit on a purported finding that the wine offered for tasting is locally produced and each winery is allowed only one ABC permit fails to address redundancy in merchandise or the general purposes of use permits set forth in section 17.168.010, essentially eviscerating the use permit requirement and establishing a bad precedent that opens the door for every winery to argue it should be granted a use permit for a tasting room. I don't have this typed up to send around.
I have a question.
Yes.
Typically, when an appeal is granted, when in this case, when an appeal is granted, the applicant would be precluded under our code from reapplying again for 1 year unless the resolution was made without prejudice. Is that the case?
That's correct. Our code assumes any denial is made with prejudice.
Okay. I would offer this to the council that if there are ideas or there's a new project or a new situation or new information that we don't exercise our right to not allow that within a year, that the process should somehow, the applicant should somehow avail himself of bringing this sort of new project forward in a rapid time. And process-wise, it probably should come back to the Planning Commission if it is indeed that. I know the applicant probably I have no idea exactly what the project is or the new terminology, but I would be amenable to at least not having it denied without prejudice.
I would agree with that as long as we're not talking about the same location. I mean, to me, one of the basic foundations of our finding here was not the 600-foot requirement and not how many restaurants might be within 600 feet. It's that there is an agency that has taken notice of the fact that this is not best practices, which we talk about quite frequently. And in this case, as different from a lot of those examples, the use itself enters and exits on the street that serves all of those, the Montessori school, the Carnegie building, the elementary school. The traffic is coming out on the same street. It's different when you go over to Main Street. So I'd support another application at a different location, to deny it without prejudice and allow them to do that.
The applicant always has the right, without the year limitation, to apply to a different location.
Then we don't need to deny it with prejudice, without prejudice.
All right. Mr. Russell, the council declines to reconsider, so the only issue for us is just the order itself that's before the commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
So at this point,
I'll second it.
so your motion is the order with the change that you
Right.
read
The
into
change
the
to
record.
paragraph J.
All right. There's been a motion, a second. Ms. Black?
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Ellsworth?
Yes.
Doring?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
No.
Mayor Galbraith?
No. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, that takes us to the appointment of a planning commissioner, 10.1, and let's start by seeing whether any applicant wishes to address the council. Please come to the podium and address the council. Yeah.
My name is Douglas Keller. I'm born and grew up here in St. Helena. I'm the son of Jeanette and Leo Keller of Keller's Market. I worked in there for years as a teenager and in my 20s. Then I went to law school after graduating from UOP with a accounting and business dual major. I went to Bolt Hall in Berkeley for law school, and then I practiced 27 years with the California Insurance Commissioner, starting as a junior counsel and rising up to being assistant general counsel, or in those days it was chief counsel. And I specialized in the field of reinsurance. You may wonder why I am even bothering to apply, especially since I've only lived full-time back in St. Helena for the last 3 months. I've had a home here as a second home for the last 7 or 8 years. And prior to that, even I was in San Francisco and Walnut Creek, but coming back very frequently to help my parents and then my mother, when she became a widow, in the business of what we called our store, Keller's Market. It's just in my nature to want to be involved. I've met with 3 of you, so I'm going to address my rest of my comments to the 2 of you whom I've not met for this purpose, although I have met Mr. White before.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. We'll do it some other time. Don't throw me off. As having been involved, at least looking at St. Helena and how it has changed throughout the years, I'm greatly concerned about the housing situation. Now I'm seeing this thing on this water thing tonight. And I've been to a few other meetings, and I've seen how contentious some of them can be. I think I can add a lot of input to it, and I would like to have that opportunity to do so. I also was involved in the remodel and retrofit of our store, Keller's Market, about 10 years ago. So I've had that experience. I handled the entire finances of it, including obtaining the monstrous loan that we had to have for it. And as well as going over and changing the plans often and very often. And I just heard the bell, so I will sit down. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keller.
Thank you, sir.
Any other applicant wish to address the? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Dave Knutson, and I had the pleasure with meeting with all of you on the council, so I really appreciate your time. I just want to summarize briefly. I've lived here for 10 years. I really enjoy being a citizen and a participant in this community, and would enjoy being on the Planning Commission. I think I'd do a good job, but I think the three things that I think that I'd like to bring to the commission if I'm so appointed would be, first of all, to really treat all applicants fairly and equitably. So I'm really a believer that it's sort of you have to make decisions without fear or favor. And that's really, I think, very important in governmental decisions, really, at any level. Secondly, I do think that the regulations in the city, it's pretty clear. You know, there's certainly some gray areas that require judgment calls. But I think it's, in general, it should be fairly straightforward for many of the decisions that are made. But I do think that, particularly for second homeowners and those that are new to our community, that we need to be particularly aware of neighborhood and other concerns. And I think that it's still without fear or favor, but I think that just being aware of what concerns might be is important to include. And then finally, it's a great town. I always think that we can do a great job of encouraging great design, and that's something that the Planning Commission has as part of its purview, and that's something that I would also look forward to participating in. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. John Pont, 2690 Pino Way, St. Helena. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for considering my application for Planning Commission this evening. Giving time and talent to the city is the hallmark of citizen participation in the governance of our community, as most of you, as all of you up there, demonstrate simply by being in your positions. I, too, would like to give of my time, talent, and training to our community. I have 20 years of planning experience on the regional, countywide, and statewide level, much of it in the Napa communities, and have been a resident here in St. Helena for about 20 years. I believe that the combination of long residency, planning experience, will make my learning curve for the commission shorter. And in this case, I think this is particularly important because of the partial term on the appointment. That's pretty much all I have to say. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you had any. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks very much, Mr. Pont.
Thank you.
Any other applicant wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. This is one of the hardest jobs that the mayor has, which is to make a nomination.
May I say something first?
Yes. Well, I'm going to make a nomination, and we'll see whether it's.
I just wanted to thank everybody.
Oh, absolutely.
I just, regardless of what happens, I just think it's wonderful that people submitted an application. I just wanted to thank everybody, and whatever happens, please continue to be engaged, because we need everybody here in town, you know, to be here and work on this. And I just wanted to thank you. I met with most every applicant and was really moved by the capabilities and the commitment, and it's wonderful. We have a great community, and thank you for stepping up.
All right.
One other comment. When people ask to meet with me, I generally meet with people. I know that I did not meet with you had you asked, I would have been happy to do so. So I don't want you to think that there was something where I chose to meet with certain people and not other people. I did meet with Mr. Knutson, and I had a conversation, I think, with Mr. Pont, just to let you know that. I'm open to that at any time, so that the air is clear there. Okay.
Okay, good. Well, of course, I'm very grateful to all the applicants for applying. I met with all the applicants, and quite frankly, I enjoyed my conversation with each one. I've given this a lot of thought as to who my nominee should be. As I say, this is one of the toughest jobs that falls on the mayor, is to make a nomination. Here we're dealing with an impressive group of applicants, and my assessment is that David Dodson is the best fit for the commission at this time, and I truly, if approved, I truly expect that he will be a strong addition to the commission. So I nominate David Dodson and encourage a second.
I'll second.
Is there any further council discussion? Ms. Black?
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Ellsworth?
Yes.
Doring?
Yes.
So again, thanks to everybody for applying, and congratulations to Mr. Dodson.
Thank you to all the applicants.
All right. Do people want to take a 5-minute break, 10-minute break? All right. We'll reconvene in 10 minutes.
I just want to note that that was a unanimous vote.
I was happy.
No? Let me reconvene our meeting for February 14th. Our next item of business is 10.2, consideration and proposed approval of resolution for a low-income subsidy program for water and wastewater customers, or provide additional direction to staff. And Ms. Burkowski, I can see you're taking the podium, so please proceed.
I am. Good evening, Mayor and Council. During our last meeting on January 24th, Council provided some general direction on various policy elements for the creation of a new low-income subsidy program for both water and wastewater customers. These included keeping administrative costs and the impacts on staff low, a maximum general fund contribution, additional analysis of the impacts on extremely low and very low income customers, whether or not we can design a program for city residents only, and the answer is yes, we can, and to focus on base rates only and consider drought surcharges and water conservation usage at a later time. So tonight, I've brought before you a policy that staff has drafted, trying to keep in mind all of these areas of the direction that Council provided during the last meeting. Tonight, you can adopt it, or you can provide me with additional direction, and I'll be happy to make those changes. And if they're minor, perhaps we can just make the changes to the resolution this evening, or if they're significant, I can bring it back to you for your approval at the next meeting. In part, this project faces many challenges, and it's a very complex task. And that's really because of all the possible variables for determining what is affordable and even what keeps an individual household in the affordable range. And that's because these are impacted by household size, is a customer at the low or high end of the income poverty ranges, lifestyle and amenities such as having a large parcel of land, lush landscaping, pools, habits such as running the water when you're hand washing your dishes, using a high gallon flush toilet, or property leaks. So in other words, the usage component is very hard to figure out. And you combine that with the monthly charges that vary based upon the meter size and the number of units when we're talking about both multifamily and mobile home dwellings. The wastewater monthly fees also vary by dwelling type, such as single-family, multifamily, or mobile home park. So just to give you just a brief example, I've just included some bullet points on the slide that talks about, for example, if you have a 6-inch water meter on a property with 50 units, then each unit for water is going to pay $25.05 a month. If you have a 1-inch meter with 2 units, then that cost is $40.04 per unit. When you get into some of the larger complexes, if you have a 6-inch meter and 173 units, that's $7.24 per unit. So it just adds some complexity to the challenges in trying to come up with generalizations and taking a look at general analysis. So I did some additional calculations, and these are some of the assumptions that I used to try and run some scenarios to come up with what percentages might be reasonable to help bring some of the base rates for water and wastewater into a more affordable category for some of our low-income customers. And so I ran the scenarios using the CARE income guidelines as well as the official state income limits for Napa County for extremely low and low-income scenarios. I ran the scenarios using both a 2-person household and a 4-person household. I did use peak water usage rates so that I was trying to go for on the high end of what water would cost. However, I also factored in that these homes, as low income, would be encouraging high water conservation, both to save money and also just to reduce outdoor irrigation. For the winter average calculation, I assumed that was the same as the water usage. So after doing all those calculations and taking a look at the various categories, you can see that they really ranged across the board. And again, that's due to household size, the billing type, in other words, is it a multi-family, a single family, a mobile home park, and the income. The percentages really varied here to get to that 2.5% range of annual income for the year for both the water and the wastewater bills. And by the way, this is a combined. This assumes that the customer has both water and wastewater. So based on these percentages, and you can see they really vary. So for single family, it can range between a 50% discount to an 80% discount. In the multi-units, this became very, very challenging. As you can tell, sometimes it was 0%, and that was particularly when you were talking about a larger complex, to sometimes 40 to 80%. For the mobile homes, again, this is using a large mobile home park as our example. They needed a lower percentage to bring us down into the affordable rate. So thinking about these rates, and also with the council direction to provide relief to customers, as well as keep the administration costs low, staff tried to determine a way, was there a flat percentage that could be used? Could we take a look at these numbers and pick something in the middle that would give relief to most customers, but also reduce the staff burden? Going in and creating 9 different rates and individually reviewing everyone's income statements is an awful lot of work for a staff that is already heavily tasked with day-to-day responsibilities for water and wastewater. So keeping that in mind, staff is recommending as part of the policy to encourage the use of the PG&E CARE program guidelines as much as possible. There is one small change here, and so what's on the screen in front of you and in the proposed policy is the CARE rates. And so for everyone who has a PG&E meter, we are going to encourage you, show us your bill, and it's a very easy approval. The one change there is the households that have 1 to 2 persons. The PG&E CARE rate is right around $32,000 as the income limit. You'll notice that staff has recommended an income limit of $35,000. That actually reflects the low income range for the official state income limits for Napa County. We deduced that the number of households who might be between $32,000 and $35,000 is probably quite low, so it could offer relief to a few number of households where they wouldn't be eligible for the PG&E CARE program, but they could be eligible for ours. I'd also like to point out that participation in any program that the City of St. Helena creates, that you, the council, put forth, does not preclude any household from going after or securing other subsidies, perhaps by not-for-profits or the county, to help also reduce their bill. So taking a look at the percentages that I showed you a few moments earlier right there, staff took a look and said, you know, the single family really sort of has the closest grouping and in many parts some of the highest burden, factoring out the extremely low income households. And so what we're proposing is to keep the 50% discount that's in place for the current program. And so what I have on the screen for you now is to help take you out of that world of percentages and put you into some dollars, because I think that's what a lot of us can look at and really equate to. And so here I just ran some scenarios. And again, these are off of base rates. And so, for example, if it's a single family home with an up to a 1-inch meter with no discount, it would be $91.26 for base fees a month. With a 50% discount, that's $45.63. For another one there, for a multifamily with a 3-inch meter and 22 units, without a discount, that's $47.85 a month. With a 50% discount, that drops down to $23.92. So you can just see just some different scenarios in the community. One thing to remember is in the proposed policy is to be regularly updating the income limits, both through the PG&E program as well as comparing against the official state limits. And so staff could be revising the income limits as soon as May. That's when PG&E does their revision. And again in December when HCD revises the official state limits. So some of the key proposed program elements that are listed in Exhibit A of your attachment this evening to the staff report is probably the most obvious. They must receive water and or wastewater from the City of St. Helena. They have to meet the revised income limits. That the discount is at a primary residence. In other words, this should not be received at a second home for people. That they It is preferred that they provide PG&E care eligibility. However, if that's not possible, we've asked them to provide the same income documentation that PG&E requires, as well as that their qualification, as well as that the income eligibility is based on the gross total household income. We'll ask that folks renew their eligibility annually in June. Because we're looking at this now to begin in February, we're looking for it to coincide with the end of our fiscal year. We'll do that first eligibility renewal in 2018. And this will be for residential customers. So those are folks in single-family residences, multifamily like apartments, townhouses, and condominiums, as well as mobile home parks. Again, the proposed 50% discount off the base rate, that's the monthly charge for water and or wastewater. I've proposed a limit from the general fund subsidy for $80,000 for this fiscal year and then increasing to $90,000 in next fiscal year. However, also recommending that council can authorize an increase at any point in time during the fiscal year with a budget amendment. And that's because this really is a new program for the city of St. Helena. All the programs that we've done in the past have focused in on single-family homes, and we are potentially opening up a lot of new eligible applicants in our multifamily and mobile home parks. So it's hard to estimate what the need is going to be, as well as what that cost is going to be. Again, if you think back to that chart that showed you with the different meter sizes and the number of units, it can be hard to estimate. And so this was, quite frankly, my best guess. I tried to put some thought and some analysis into it, but in the end, it still is a guess. And then knowing that based on need, the council can authorize an increase. And where can that be done? In our quarterly finance reports. Every quarter, when Finance Director Mids presents her reports, she'll give an indication on how much funds have been reserved, as well as projections out, because by then we'll know what size meter you have and what type of billing you have. We're also proposing to create a wait list if the demand exceeds the funds, and also that customers can apply at any time. There's no enrollment period, say like there is with health insurance, or someone moves in, they can apply right at the point in time where they open their account. We have asked in the policy for up to 60 days to make an income determination. For those who are providing a PG&E bill that shows the care rate, that's a quick and easy determination, will be done in a couple days. That 60 days is really for the back and forth that we think will occur as people are providing the income documentation, and we may need to go back and make some requests for additional time. As was brought up in the last meeting, the subsidy will be distributed via a bill credit, which is preferred, but due to some landlord-tenant issues, we may need to issue a monthly check after the payment is received. For those customers who may require the contract because of a landlord-tenant situation, unfortunately, we may need just a little bit of additional time before the subsidy can be distributed, again, because this is the first time we're moving forward on this type of program. That contract will require that the subsidies must go to an individual tenant and not be distributed among a complex as a whole. We will need a short transition period, although our plan is to have this launched and rolling as soon as possible. As Ms. Mitz stated earlier, the first bills with the new rates are in the mail, and so we do want to be very proactive on this. So assuming that you do adopt the policy tonight or adopt it with minor changes, our current enrollees, again, there are 66 individuals, will receive a letter and have 60 days to re-verify their eligibility. They last verified their eligibility approximately 1 year ago, last January. We're going to put a rush on the marketing and the application materials, and those will be available next Tuesday, right after President's Day. And we'll begin working as soon as possible with legal counsel on the templates for the various agreements, and then begin with our marketing and outreach. We anticipate a very robust program to alert as many individuals as possible that this program is out there, and we would encourage them to apply. Bill inserts, farmers market come the summer, coordinate with our conservation efforts, develop partnerships with local nonprofits, etc. And so for the general fund impacts, again, I mentioned that, I recommended an $80,000 limit for this current fiscal year. That would include monies that have already been expended for the existing low-income program. And so as of December 31st, we had expended $22,628 from the general fund, and then moving forward, $90,000. And once again, that council can increase the general fund contributions at any time with a budget amendment, and to pay special attention to the mention of the program in the finance quarterly reports. So that's my overall summary of trying to take the various direction that you provided to me at the last council meeting and put together what I hope you will find to be is a good skeleton. But I look forward to your questions and either your adoption of the policy or your additional direction this evening.
Thank you very much. An excellent presentation. Really, a lot of work went into it. Are there any initial questions of Ms. Prokowski?
I echo what the mayor says. Thank you very much. It's a very, very comprehensive, well thought out report. One question I have is, it's not clear to me whether you're recommending that this be only in-city residents or out-of-city residents. It's not clear from the attachment. I didn't see that one way or another.
So I currently have it drafted as to include all water customers, because I wasn't sure by your question at the last meeting, because you had just asked whether or not that was possible. I needed legal counsel to determine that, so I wasn't sure what the pulse of the council was. So that was the way I left it, knowing we could make an amendment this evening.
Thank you.
Any other initial questions of Ms. Prokowski? Let me open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment?
I'm still Pat Dell. I still live at 25 San Juan Court, and I want to add my thanks to you. It's an excellent report, but I do have questions. I think our general manager's been working with April Mitz, but she's not here tonight, and I know they're going to be.
April Mitz is right there.
No, Shelley. I know Shelley is not here.
Oh.
Yes, I'm looking at April, and I'm quite well acquainted with her. So I do have a few questions. The 50% discount, the $25.02 for mobile homes, does that go directly to the recipient, or how do the low-income people in Vineyard Valley get that $25.02? Should I ask all my questions?
Ask your questions, and we'll try and
okay, it says meet income guidelines revised annually. I think that's kind of funny, because many of the people in Vineyard Valley who are going to meet these guidelines live exclusively on Social Security, and I can assure you that the income doesn't go up much year by year, so you don't have to worry about that. But the point is, what kind of income guidelines do these individuals need to show? Their tax returns, or what do you want? And to whom will those guidelines be given? Are they going to be given to Shelley in Vineyard Valley? Are they going to be given to April? Okay, I'm getting some answers by shake of the head. So what I really need to know is what happens to the $25.02.
Okay, very good. Let me see whether Ms. Mitz, can you respond?
I definitely can respond. Yes, I have been working with Shelley, and she's been wonderful, and we've been meeting corresponding. The 50% discount will go directly to the recipient, so that is something that we are going to. It will be reflected in the bill that you receive from Vineyard Valley. So each month.
Sorry, Finance Director Mitz, I need to interrupt so to make sure that we're giving the proper information to the community. This actually goes back to some of the legal issues. And so our first hope is to be able to enter into a written agreement with both the property management companies as well as individual tenants. So in your case with the mobile home park owner as well as yourself. And then that would be given as a bill credit to Vineyard Valley, and that would be directly taken off your monthly payment that you make to them for water. However, if we cannot reach that agreement, because the city cannot force the management company to sign an agreement, nor can we force any tenant to make an agreement, then we will be mailing out a check to individual recipients after we receive their water payment.
Okay.
Thank you. And I have every indication that I've had from Shelley is that they would be taking it off of your monthly bill that you receive from from Vineyard Valley. And the second item is regarding the income guidelines. If you qualify for the care rate, you would just provide to staff directly, the individual, your care program eligibility, so we would see that right away. If we have to actually do the income verification, it is outlined in the procedures where you provide us information, and there's a list of different things you can provide for us. We do request that you cross out your Social Security number. If you don't, we black it out for you because we want to make sure that we obey any HIPAA and any privacy laws whatsoever. But that is something that would not go to the management. It would come to us directly, and it stays in the finance office under lock and key.
Okay. Any further public comment? Then I'll close public comment. Is there any council discussion, or can we adopt this? To me, it's very important, if we can, to adopt this and move it forward as rapidly as possible.
I would just like to make the comment that, Tracy, you did a pretty wonderful job in a short period of time.
It's a very complex
thank you.
subject. I appreciate that.
Move approval of the staff recommendation.
Second.
Ms. Blatt?
Can we have discussion?
Sure. Any further discussion? Sure.
Okay. I appreciate all your work. My concern is the income limits. I think the last time we talked about this, we looked at the discrepancy between the care rate limits and the Napa County limits, which are considerable. For some of these household sizes, it's $20,000. You can make $20,000 more here in St. Helena and still be classified as low, very low, or extremely low, and you're not eligible for the care program. And to me, those are the people who need the most help. And I should think that we could do a couple of things. We could have a different subsidy rate in those categories, maybe for households of 1, 2, and 3 persons. I'm only guessing, but I'm thinking a lot of these people, like maybe single people or empty nesters, or I'm just guessing. I also think that you could verify the income rather easily with a tax return or something, and you're apparently already doing some income verification, so I don't really see that it's a lot more administrative work. On the other hand, if people can't pay their water bills, then we have the administrative costs of the delinquency notices and all that procedure that gets started. So I am concerned about them. I would like to see some greater subsidy given to people, at least in those bottom 3 categories for 1, 2, 3 person households. I did some calculations myself. I used what was in the rate study in the affordability section, and calculated that if you had a single family home and somebody in the extremely low income category, they were going to pay 13% of their income for their water and wastewater bills. And I mean, that's just extraordinary. A single-family house that happens to have a very low-income person in it. So I would hope we could look at greater subsidies in some of these categories. The only other thing that is counterintuitive to me is if we're projecting we're going to spend $80,000 in this fiscal year, next year the rates go up again. Doesn't make sense to me that 90 should be able to cover what we're going to have to subsidize. So those are my 2 points. I think we need to focus more on the income categories and really consider whether we're setting aside enough money in the general fund for this program.
Okay.
I agree with everything you're saying. From my perspective, I think we just need to have a test case for a few months to see how it all plays out, to revisit it. I don't know how many people are going to apply, what those numbers are. I agree with you that the income limitation, especially for the single person, especially that one, I think that's going to be difficult for people. But I'm of the mind that we should come back in a few months and just kind of by anecdotal information see how it's working. I agree next year is going to be a problem. I'm concerned about, frankly, lack of money in our general fund to go too far out and then have to pull it away. I'd rather slowly, incrementally move it up as income in the city improves, sort of a transition period. But I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, maybe we revisit it at budget time or something.
Yeah, my suggestion is that we go forward with this tonight. We're going to collect some anecdotal experience pretty quickly, and then staff can come back with an amendment. And I, too, agree with your comments about the very low-income folks. But I think the most important thing for me tonight is to move forward with this and then come back and adjust. Get this in place.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I respectfully request some policy guidance from council on your desire to expend general fund dollars for out-of-city limit customers.
Oh, yes.
We need your help on that one.
Yeah. That's a difficult one because I guess my instinctive reaction is that all customers should be treated equally. They're customers of our system, and so I don't particularly care for the idea that we would not treat low-income folks outside city limits differently from low-income folks inside city limits. That's just my reaction to it.
I agree with the mayor.
I do too. I think we have some neighborhoods that we service water to that really are going to need some subsidy.
I agree with that as well. I think that the opportunity that we voted on earlier to revisit the water rate study hopefully will really let us open up our view of our whole water system, our whole water enterprise system, and so we can really figure out how to balance things. So I do agree that our customers in or out, if they're in need, are in need. And I like the idea of moving this forward with the idea that we're going to get soon, we'll find out more information and we can make changes as we go. But I do think that it's time for us to really look at every aspect, every resource of our water enterprise system and find the best way for all.
Okay.
I think I have the guidance I need, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
very good. I think we're ready to vote.
Well, I think we have.
So, Councilmember Doring, are you amending your motion to include all customers to be included?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Ellsworth?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. Again, thank you very much, Ms. Perkoski.
Thank you, Tracy. Excellent work.
Okay, let's see where we're headed next. We're up to 10.3, where we have an updated resolution, and that's Ms. Mitz, I think.
It is.
And
I will give a brief and hopefully articulate scenario of what had happened. This, again, is one of those things where we found past practice. What was voted on by the City Council was not actually enacted and not followed up on. So there are two different things that the city staff is proposing tonight. It's approval of two different resolutions. The first one is an immediate partial payback to the general fund from the Water and Wastewater Funds. And that is for a loan that was done back in 2010. It was supposed to be a 5-year payoff on the loan. They made the payments in 2012, 2013, and then payments dropped off, and we haven't made the payments since. So there's still outstanding money that is owed to the general fund from both the Water and Wastewater Fund. The second approval for the resolution is a transfer to the Water and Wastewater Funds from the general fund for the low-income subsidies for the previous care rates. So the first part of it is on June 22nd, 2010, we had the loan from the general fund to the Water and Wastewater Funds. And then further in 2008, the City Council adopted the current care rate that we have. And what happened was part of that resolution in Recital C, it did state that any money that was used for the care rates as a subsidy had to come from either the interest that was earned for the Water and Wastewater Funds or from the general fund, and that it could not be a subsidy. The other ratepayers were not responsible for paying for that. I have been working with Tom's office on the legalities under Prop 218 of using interest income that is currently being earned in the Water and Wastewater Funds, and we have made the determination that that is something that does not follow under Prop 218, so it will have to come completely from the general fund to the water and wastewater. So what we are proposing is an immediate partial payback to the general fund from the water and wastewater, and that's to cover the care rate subsidy from 2008, which is as far back as we can track it in our financial system. That is the year that we changed to Springbrook, which is our current financial system. So 2008 through December 31st, 2016. So the total dollar amount, and you'll see that in Table 3, for the water account, the amount that the subsidies from 2008 till December 31st is $63,906. The sewer, the subsidy was $80,848. And again, remember, this goes back to 2008. It's not just for this current fiscal year. And then the flip side of it is that once that, and this is, it's going to be a neutral on either on the water, wastewater funds and on the general fund. It's completely neutral because we're using part of it is a payback, and then part of it is a subsidy going back. And then the last thing that we want to do is establish new loan terms. And then what that would do is in fiscal year 17, 18, whatever the remaining balance is for that the loan that the Water and Wastewater Fund have, that they pay back the general fund in 2017, 18, so it's not an additional hit to the Water Wastewater Funds for this fiscal year. So that is my very brief presentation. I'll definitely be able to answer any questions. To me, it is definitely confusing because it's a lot of stuff that we're playing cleanup items on.
Right. All right. Any initial questions? Any public comment? Makes your head spin, but there you are. No public comment. Any council discussion? Move the item?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Black?
Sorry, one point of clarification as well. I did have an error on the resolution that was in the staff report. It has been corrected. Every one of you has copies of the correction, and it is on the back as well.
Okay, yes.
Okay, I move to approve that one.
Second.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor White.
Yes.
Councilmember Earlsworth.
Yes.
Koberstein.
Yes.
Doring.
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith.
Yes. Okay, that takes us to
10.5.
No, we're back at 10.4 on the second part B.
Oh.
And that's Ms. Koberstein's item, consideration and direction response to proposal from the St. Helena Chamber of Commerce with respect to the establishment of a PBID.
Mr. Mayor, before you start, I may have a conflict of interest here that I'm having the FPPC look into. The reason being is that I may have clients who are outside the city, but likely within the proposed boundary of the proposed PBID district. And so I don't know one way or another whether that is a conflict. I just assume have that resolved by the state of California. Okay. And so I'm going to recuse myself at this point, and we'll see where it goes as we move forward.
We'll have you back shortly, hopefully.
Should we do the 9.5 first, and then you can go home?
That's all right. I'll be back. Okay.
I was just trying to be helpful.
That's all right.
It's Valentine's.
The reason I put this on for discussion is I think that we need to get ourselves in a position to be able to act on the PBID and analyze it when it comes to us. My understanding is the Chamber is looking at some other options, and we'll see something. Maybe it'll be the same. Maybe it'll be an alternative of what they presented before. But the statute that governs this, in my mind, raised some issues, and we would do well to get some advice as to how we proceed under them. The first one is one that I raised with Tom and the manager of what do we do with cities, with properties that are in unincorporated Napa County. And we have a procedure we need to go through with them and some kind of agreements, and I think we need to understand what that is, what the time frame is, because it has an effect on who's an eligible voter. If we don't have the agreement in place with Napa County, those votes, my understanding is, wouldn't count on the petition. I think there's some other things that we need. There's, let's see. I need a better understanding myself, and I understand Tom's partner is well versed in this. This whole thing is based on special benefits that accrue to property in certain districts, and I really would appreciate an education on what passes muster as a special benefit, so that we know that the properties that are included are actually going to get the special benefits that the statute requires. Along the same lines, there's something in the statute that properties that are zoned for residential use or agricultural use are presumptively assumed not to benefit. So I have questions about that. Can they still be in the district to establish contiguity and they have no assessment, or how are we to treat those? Because at least on some of the initial plans, there are single-family homes and other things used, I think, to establish contiguity of a particular zone. And I want to know how we react to that, or what we have to be able to do. We also have, at least in the original proposal, a lot of public, quasi-public properties being assessed. And here, I think my interest goes mainly to understanding the special benefits and how we weigh those on a property that's not really a business property in the district. And then lastly, and I think there is supposed to be a management plan that comes to us that sort of lays out what is proposed in general terms for each district during the first year, and maybe approximate cost. And lastly, I'd like to know what are our continuing obligations as a city council if we were to approve this district. I think there are some ongoing things that we have to be doing. So that's really my list. I'd like us to, maybe get some input back so that when this does come to us, we know what to look for, and we know where we stand with Napa County.
Why? I mean, I think you posed some interesting questions, without doubt, but why isn't it appropriate for staff to address those questions at the time that the PBID next comes back to us, so it's addressed in the concrete context of what the chamber decides to propose?
It could be. I don't know if we're going to ask, Tom's partner to give us a report or something, and maybe it would come at the same time. On the other hand, the chamber might benefit from hearing what he has to say too, in case we have some issues.
There's no magic formula here. We can do it either way the council desires. I can certainly have my partner Mike Biddle has shepherded many of these, and I could have him respond in writing. I can have him come out to a meeting. Probably responding in writing to the questions would be a useful start. Or, as the mayor was suggesting, we can also respond to those questions in a more concrete context when it comes back. Whatever the council desires. There's no legal reason you have to do one over the other.
Yeah, I guess my concern is that responding in a concrete context makes the most sense to me, only because otherwise you can end up spending time and attorney time on hypotheticals that aren't going to be problems, and I would like to avoid that if possible.
I agree with that, with the exception of the Napa County issue, because I would like to know what the agreement is and what the timeline is, because this whole thing is on a timeline. And I think it's important for us to know, if we're going to approve it, what's the next step with Napa County? How quickly can we accomplish it, and what effect does that have on the overall schedule here?
All right, let me open the public hearing and have Ms. Simpson speak to that.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. It's Pam Simpson, St. Helena Chamber of Commerce. I would hate to see you guys waste a lot of money with the attorneys researching a lot of this when our consultants have done a lot of this research, and I could probably answer some of those questions. And we can easily work with Tom, with the consultants, and get those questions answered without you guys having to spend a whole lot of money. Our consultants have written the law, the PBID law, and so know those things. When you're, first of all, the county, we have to go to the county and ask them to allow the city to be the lead jurisdiction on this, and then the city would be able to collect the funds. It would go on the property tax bill, so the county actually takes the money and then gives it to the city, which then gives it to the property, or to the PBID board. And so we have to enter an agreement, or we have to get the county to pass a resolution that gives the city the lead jurisdiction, and then we have to go back to the city, and they would have to pass a resolution upon formation. So we already know those things. I can't remember what your other question was. Oh, the ag stuff. Ag is allowed as long as there's some sort of other commercial use on the property. So take a vineyard that actually has a commercial entity on the vineyard, then you can assess ag, and so that's legal to do. Quasi-public is legal for in a PBID because the benefit is that St. Helena looks better, and that things happen improved with sidewalks. The improvements are just a general benefit. We're required to do general benefits back to each specific district, and those are spelled out in the managed district plan. So I would suggest that we get the management district plan to you, and that was our intent, so that you could see. At this point, we've already done a lot of research and met a lot of the requirements that we needed to do. We've conducted the survey in each of the service areas to find out what we believe the needs to be. We've done that. We have the engineered report, and we have a draft of the management district plan that our board is going to approve tomorrow morning. And so my suggestion would be let's not make the city attorney jump through a bunch of hoops until we can get the management district plan, and then I'm happy to have Civitas out of Sacramento work with Tom and be able to provide those questions in legalese and not in my words.
All right. Does that sound reasonable to you, Ms. Koberstein?
Yeah, I got the impression from information we got that there was an agreement that we had to execute with Napa County, and there was a little more to it than was just described.
I need to look into it. Okay. And I would envision the process that Pam is describing would be one that would be pretty cost effective. I don't anticipate that we're reinventing any wheels here or like that. I think that probably that collaborative or cooperative relationship would work just fine.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Ms. Dell?
This is another one of those instances in which there have been oblique references to this Chamber of Commerce proposition. Apparently the mayor and the vice mayor seemed to be very enthusiastic about it on the day of the goal setting. You each mentioned that you would like to see this happen quickly. Mm-hmm. I got a postcard from the Chamber of Commerce, which had to be very expensive to produce, and which, by the way, was not produced in St. Helena. It seems like if we're trying to build up local business, we need to do that kind of business locally. What I'm asking is, will the public ever get something other than that postcard? Because I have a whole bunch of questions from that postcard, believe me, before you all make your decision, because this does affect, it says it's for the benefit of all of us, for the citizens. Quite frankly, I can't see that, so we need to have an explanation sooner or later, and I think experience is teaching us that better to do it sooner than later. Thank you.
All right. All right. Any further public comment?
Hi, I'm Bobby Munoz, speaking as a resident again. And, which has been happening more and more and more. I'm in agreement with Pat. And And this is an example of what I think what she's talking about. Because my concern is, first of all, I went down to the chamber today. I went on the website and saw what was there. And then I went down, and they were kind enough to print out all the information that's on their website about this issue. And all of that information is great, but it didn't answer the questions, the concerns that I have, which may not be based on accurate information. But that, again, to piggyback on what Pat was just saying, I don't have access to accurate information if I have inaccurate information here. And my big concern is that, my understanding is that there will be taxpayers' money assessed for these projects, that the city will be giving some money, that is, I'm assuming, money from property taxes. And my understanding, too, is that the decision-making process for this event, or whatever you want to call it, is based on kind of like an oligarchy, that people who pay more will have more influence, so that they'll have more votes. It's like a stockholder. I mean, the people who have the most stock in a corporation get to, their votes count more. And since taxpayer money is going to be used to do these things, that's the other thing. I couldn't find anywhere where there would be public input to what these projects might be, to the distribution of the funds. From what I know, there would be no council input or public input. That these decisions would be made, and these ideas would come from the people who are in this PBID. I don't totally understand what that is, but the people who are paying from the business, even though there would be public monies involved. So, that doesn't sound democratic to me. Government distribution of government fund or of taxpayer money should be based on democracy, I think. One person, one vote. People pay varying property taxes. But the people who pay the most property taxes don't get to, they have one vote when they vote for a city council person. They have one vote when they have the same number of votes as people who are renting and aren't paying any property taxes. So those are some of my concerns based on not enough information and maybe even misinformation. But so again, I'm saying this needs to be vetted really, really well, and more information needs to be available about these questions, particularly the use of taxpayer money. If it's for businesses, fine, do it any system you want. But if you're using taxpayer money, I have real concerns, including when I saw that postcard, I thought, I paid for part of this, because the city gives money to the Chamber of Commerce. So, and I don't know, I wasn't too happy about that. So,
all right, thank you very much. Ms. Simpson?
It's a discussion, so I'm hoping that you'll allow me to address a little bit of that.
No, I think we have a rule. Just you're up once and that's it. So I'm going to enforce the rule. We're not going to make any real decisions here today. This is just a very beginning discussion. So thank you.
I would ask that you reconsider that, because I think that we haven't.
No, it's a pretty strong rule that we have,
but
Ms. Simpson.
They came out and they asked about certain things, and this is discussion, and there's no motion.
Ms. Simpson.
But you want a discussion.
Thank you very much. We have a rule that people speak once, and if I vary from that rule, then I'm in trouble from one meeting to the next. So I appreciate it, but there will be plenty of time for more discussion here. Thank you very much.
Happy to talk to both of you about that.
Yeah, sure. All right, let me close the public hearing. I think, anybody else? All right, I close the public hearing, and obviously we're going to have a significant discussion of this issue down the road, and I think Ms. Koberstein was just alerting us to some of the issues that should be addressed, in my view, and I think in hers too at this point, in a concrete context.
And I think when this does come to the council, we should schedule it as a study session or something where we have more ability for people to ask us questions and us to respond. I don't know if that's the study session or what the Brown Act word is for it, but I think we should be able to have this robust explanation by the Chamber of what it is, and opportunity for people to ask questions so everybody understands.
Sure,
There's no legal impediment that would preclude that.
Sure, I've got no problem with that.
Public hearing?
Yeah. What's that?
We style it as a public hearing. We could.
I think that it would be better for me to look with my partner at what the entire process requires, and then we can decide whether, with your staff, as to the best way to bring that back to you. But it's not purely a legal question. I'm quite confident that the process, even if it's not expanded by the council, consistent with the discussion you've had tonight, that the process itself will involve that opportunity for public input.
It does involve a public hearing, but it's kind of like at the end, I think, when the council's ready to act. So I'm suggesting that we have a workshop or something kind of early on so people understand. We can talk about it next time, but.
Sure. I mean, I've got no objection to a workshop when the chamber is available to participate along with the public, because it is a more open, two-way conversation than the rather stylized meetings that we have in accordance with our rules. So, very good.
I'd like to add to that as well, that I think that's a good way to go, because I've had a lot of questions from people wondering about what it is and wanting to know more before things move forward and they lose the opportunity to comment. People have brought up the idea, wondering whether it's publicly owned properties or business with a combination and the impacts. And so I think there's not enough information for people to feel comfortable, and so having some workshop-styled meetings so that there's a back and forth, and then we go over what this is and how it works for the community. I think that's a necessary step.
Okay.
I think we should point out, too, that we've only had a week and a half, or not even a week and a half, since we gave council direction at our workshop to even have staff work with the chamber, to put together the P-bid, to put together a staff report for us that we would have all the correct information. Apparently you've delved into it a whole lot more than I have. I've only gotten an overview, and my feeling is that council really can't weigh in on some of these things until we actually have the information before us, and we have staff to bring us that information. It's not that we should go pick it up off of the street or have suppositions of what maybe it means or things like that. That's how misinformation travels around this town, and to have some of the things that were just said without being able to have an interaction back and forth to be able to answer those questions, I think is unfortunate. For one, I think it flames the fuel of the way that people perceive things that go on in this town. So I guess I'm a little perturbed that we're having these kinds of discussions without having anything before us to be able to reference, and I don't mind having questions and stuff, but to kind of bring these things up in a void without information to back it up, and I think that's what we have staff for. I mean, we're policymakers. We're not the ones who are going out and doing staff work to bring information to our meetings and then making decisions where, I mean, I have no reference, no information at all about this. And apparently, Councilmember Koberstein has some reference that I've never heard of. So, I think we need to use our staff and give direction to them to bring back information to us so we can actually act as council members.
That's what I was suggesting, and I see it principally in this initial phase as legal counsel. And if it can be done in conjunction with the chamber's consultant, that's fine. But otherwise, I don't know what our staff is doing at this point. It's like too early to help prepare petitions or ballots. I think that's part of the assistance that the chamber was requesting. So
But we just gave them direction to work with the chamber to bring us some information Saturday before last.
But I don't understand what they would be working with the chamber to bring us at this point. Maybe you can elaborate. I can see where we definitely need our legal counsel to work with the chamber in a manner I just suggested, so that.
And I think we already gave them direction to do that, didn't we?
Yeah, all I was doing was merely highlighting some additional questions that have come to my mind since I got the material. I think we have all been briefed on this by the chamber, and I'm just trying to make sure we're in a position to answer questions or know what the law is when we're asked to look at this. I'm not trying to be the staff.
Okay. Well, I think hopefully the staff will be able to work with the chamber efficiently and move through some of these questions. So I think that's about as far as we can take it this evening.
Well, one of the things that, if I may, is that we talk about projects. We need to see benefits and impacts. We need to weigh the two, and we need to see the two. So, in the county, when they did a tourism improvement district, it created some unforeseen impacts. And I think we need to look at impacts as well as benefits. And that's not to say that a project doesn't have, will bring great things, but we also have to look at the possible impacts to people who might not have a vote on it. So I think that the discussion is what needs to happen, and it needs to be inclusive the whole way along.
Okay, well, I think that goes to the point that we would consider having a workshop that once the materials are much more in much more concrete form than they are today. That's basically where my head is anyway. All right, I think it's time to bring Mr. Doring back from FPPC Purgatory. So that takes us 10.5, which is the second quarter finance report, and Ms. Mitza, you're up again.
Okay, I'm just waiting for my PowerPoint to come up. I know the anticipation's killing everyone right now. There we go. Okay, so this is my mid-year budget review. So I'm going to go through it in three separate categories. One is our general fund, one is going to be our water fund, and one is going to be our wastewater fund. So again, a little refresher, and if you ever get sick of this, let me know and I'll take it out. But general fund, our revenue categories, we do receive funds from several sources. Property tax, sales tax, and TOT are the highest generators. In addition, we have other taxes, license and permits, fines and forfeits, intergovernmental, interest and rents, and charges for service and miscellaneous. So the overview of our general fund revenues, you'll see on the left-hand side are the columns for the revenue source. The next column is our adopted budget. So that is what the council adopted. It was last June. The next category where it's an adjusted budget. What that does is that takes into consideration anything that may have gone to City Council between July 1st and December 31st. So you'll see that there's a slight variation. It was a $2,000, I believe, for the library was that. And then we have our collection through December 31st, 2016. And then on the far right, you can see the percentage of revenue collected. So we are in line with some from the previous years. Our total percent collected is 48%. You will see the one where it's an intergovernmental for 111% collected. That has to do with strike team reimbursements. So that was our fire department went out on strike teams, and we did receive reimbursement for that. So that is why that's at 111%. So the revenue adjustments that we are proposing tonight, and this is based on the information of what we've collected so far and what other projections we've received from the county and from different revenue forecasts such as Muni Services. So for property tax, we are anticipating an increase in the amount of property tax that we will receive from what our initial estimates are. So we're proposing a $100,000 increase in property tax revenues. That is primarily driven by houses that were sold or properties that were sold, so it did have a higher assessed value, in addition to maybe properties that had some remodeling, rebuilding, and had a higher assessment. In lieu vehicle fees, we are proposing that is increased by $40,000, and that's just based off of what we received so far to date and what our anticipated projections are for the rest of the year. Sales tax, we are proposing a $315,000 increase. That is for two different reasons. The first is Muni Services projections at the end of December 31st is about $86,000 higher. If my memory is correct, it's about $86,000 higher than what their estimates were. And then the additional $250,000 is with the passage of Measure D. Measure D, our revenues for that, we should start seeing them. They'll be collected April 1st. So those are for additional revenues collected between April 1st and June 30th of 2017. TOT, we are suggesting a $75,000 decrease, and that has to do with Los Alcobas not coming online yet. Our original projections were that they would be online sometime between January and the 1st of February. Their projections now are February 21st, which is next Tuesday. I'm not seeing it, but maybe a miracle will be pulled out. So we are suggesting a decrease of $75,000. Fines and forfeits, we are proposing a decrease of $20,000, and that has to do with the amount that's been collected for police fines. And then charges for services and miscellaneous, we are requesting a $52,000 increase, and that is for just various things such as building permits coming in, the planning department, just miscellaneous services that we do charge for. I can definitely talk on that. One of the items for TOT, and this will come up in the long-range financial forecast that I'll mention a little bit later, is that we do have for our long-range financial forecast for general fund, we do have some concerns with the projections that we did use previously that we might have been our estimates might be a little high. One of the reasons is we are looking at Los Alcobas coming online as well as Four Seasons up in Calistoga. So in our long-range financial forecast, we did take Los Alcobas into consideration. However, we did not take into consideration potential revenues that might be lost for the other hotels that are within the city. So that's something that I will address also in the long-range financial forecast. But that's just something to think about. We really are going to have to watch it next year and see what revenues are actually coming in. So our general fund revenue adjustments, based on the last numbers that were just given, you can see what the adjusted budget was, are projected. So we're taking it from $10.593 million to $11.04. So we are looking at an overall increase in our general fund revenues of almost $412,000. An overview of our expenses for the general fund. Again, you'll see the the various departments on the left. What the adopted budget is, which was $10.6 million. The adjusted budget, which is $10.9 million, and that adjusted budget takes into consideration again council resolutions between July 1st and December 31st, which approved any use of general fund or any increase in expenses. The other thing the adjusted budget does factor in is any rollover dollar amounts from last fiscal year. So, for instance, if we have a purchase order for a contract that we signed the contract in last fiscal year, we have a purchase order, let's say, for $100,000. Maybe in last fiscal year we only expended $50,000 of it. We'll roll over the PO, and now the funds are considered encumbered, and that does factor into that adjusted budget total. You'll see the actual dollar amounts that the departments have spent, and then the percentage of the budget that has been realized. So you'll see non-departmental, city council, some of them we might not have realized. We're looking most of the time at a 50% mark. Some of them won't show the percent realized, mainly due to non-departmental is the timing of our payments for various, like the loan for the firehouse. So there are certain things timing-wise, those payments go in the latter half of the year as opposed to the first half of the year. Right now, we are looking at 43% of our total general fund budget has been realized. Departments this year and last year are doing really, really well in keeping within their parameters, and all the department heads and the departments can be congratulated on that. Our general fund expense adjustments, so these are specific adjustments that we are requesting of the City Council. Non-departmental is an increase of $4,400, and that is $3,000 for leak adjustments. The leak adjustments was something that was not factored into our budget this year. The other increase is for additional IT needs, primarily infrastructure, backup systems, and those costs. $1,400 is the amount to the general fund. You'll also see $1,400 to the water fund and the wastewater fund, since those are split evenly between the departments. The city manager, city clerk, it's an increase of $5,000. This is a cleanup item only. It's for the ECS contract amendment that was approved via Resolution 2016-155. The staff report did indicate that the $5,000 would be coming from general fund reserves. However, when we went to make the budget adjustment on our end, we read through the resolution, and the resolution inadvertently left out that the $5,000 would be coming from general fund reserves. So we're adding it to the mid-year as a cleanup item. The attorney costs, this is an increase of $190,000. There's several factors for it. The first is $50,000, an additional $50,000 for costs involved with our short-term rental enforcement. To date, we've expended just about $27,600 on short-term rental enforcement. The good news is with the enforcement, it also means that we do recoup the costs. So you'll see in our revenue side, the extra charges and miscellaneous services. That is an offset with, part of that is an offset for the $50,000 for increased money that we've received due to the enforcement. $100,000 is for general contract services, and that encumbers several different areas. One is we have a catch-all. It's called General Municipal Services, and General Municipal Services goes from everything to Tom and Tom's firm being at the city council meetings, prepping items for staff, responding to staff questions, coming to our executive team reviewing our agendas, making sure that we're in compliance. In addition, that is also covers some code enforcement, development items. We did have some costs associated with Measure D just to make sure that we were doing everything legally that we should have, labor and employment, and then other various contract issues and advice. The other thing that we have had an increased expenses this year that we never anticipate is litigation costs. So far this year we have expended about $70,000 in litigation costs, and those are split between Saldana and also a housing discrimination litigation that we currently have. As well as you'll see the last item is $40,000 for costs associated with public records requests. We have had an increase in PRAs this year. Not all of our public records requests do go through the city attorney's office. The requests that do go through the city attorney's office is if there is potentially a threat of litigation, if it's something that is very litigious and something that we need the second review of it, or if staff time just does not have the time, and Tom's office has a database of other items that have already been requested, so we make sure we don't have a duplication of efforts. So that's what encompasses the $190,000. And then I did have the question on the $40,000 for the PRAs. That would be what would be for the entire year. Right now, as I stated, we expended about $27,000. We're anticipating that $40,000 would be to cover us for the rest of the year. Initially, the city attorney budget last year, we did budget $670,000. We did spend $641,000 last year. This year, in our initial budget hearings, we did request $670,000 again. That was decreased to accommodate for some of the nonprofit funding. So it was decreased down to $582,000. So increasing it will bring us right in line with what our original estimates were. Additional fund, since that was one of the largest categories, I felt like it needed a lot of explanation. Other expense adjustments is a library, an increase of almost $2,900. The first part is $1,000 for library training. We did receive an offsetting grant for that. And the other is almost $1,900 for the Napa Valley Now membership fee. This was an item that was inadvertently left off of the original budget document, so it was an error on our part that we didn't do the transfer from last year's budget to this year's budget. Police Department, this is an increase of $37,500. I'll hit on the second two items, $1,500 for new chairs because ergonomically some of the chairs that are over there are not good, and we needed to replace them. $1,000 is for a new computer for their department. The $35,000, which is a new vehicle for the Chief of Police. This is a replacement vehicle. He currently does have a vehicle. The vehicle that was purchased after the former chief was in a car accident, and that car was deemed totaled. We received about $15,000 from our insurance company for that, and the former chief was very prudent in trying to find something within that $15,000, and we received a used car for $13,000. If you have seen the car and you know the stature of the former chief and the current chief, it does not fit. Ergonomically, it is not possible. Bill does have to take off his utility belt just to be able to fit in the seat in the car, which is unfortunately, because if he's running out and, for him to have to get out of a car, put back on his utility belt, if it's an emergency, not the best situation. In addition, again, with the ergonomic side of things, is that he can't see where, with the placement of the rearview mirror, where it limits his vision. The other additional item is the headrest. He doesn't fit with the headrest in there, and unfortunately, because of laws and safety reasons, he cannot remove the headrest. So we are requesting a new vehicle for him. Typically, if financial health of the city were better, we would have equipment replacement funds designated, and we'd be able to take it from the equipment replacement funds. Unfortunately, we do not have any funds set aside for equipment replacement, and we've been purchasing cars basically on an as-needed basis. Public Works, we are requesting an increase of $10,677. The first amount of $10,000, it is for unanticipated unemployment expenses. So it was an employee who no longer is with the city, claimed unemployment. We have been denied any type of appeal for the unemployment. We received the first quarter bill for unemployment, which was for $3,000. So extrapolating that out it was in period 2. So for period 3 and period 4, we are anticipating about $10,000 for unemployment claims. And then $677 is for improvements to Wapo Park, but this is also offset by revenues that were brought in from the Harvest Festival Pet Parade that were specifically designated for Wapo Park. The last doozy of a general fund expense is for Measure A. As stated in the September 13th meeting to City Council, we were hoping to be able to do a Measure A drawdown to be able to pay for the state revolving fund payment. It's our annual payment of $526,805. As stated in the staff report, there were several items that would have to be completed in order for us to do the Measure A drawdown before the end of this fiscal year. We knew we were on a tight deadline, and the Measure A, what we would need to complete in order to do the drawdown would be the completion of the forensic audit, which we are in the final stages of it right now. Once the forensic audit is complete, it will have to undergo an audit of previous Measure A expenditures with the County of Napa. Once we get through that audit, we have to submit the qualifying expenditures to the Flood Control District and the Measure A Financial Oversight Committee, which is through the County of Napa. And then after that, we'd have to seek approval of a contract amendment to be able to include SRF repayment as an allowable expenditure. We've had no indication that they would not allow it. However, when all the previous paperwork for use of Measure A funds was done, they did not actually include that in the contract. And so that is the things that have to be done before we can do a Measure A drawdown. Unfortunately, timing, it will not be able to happen this fiscal year, so we are going to have to take that money from the general fund reserves. There is a possibility that if the county allows us and the flood control district, if they allow us when we do the contract amendment for the SRF repayment, if they allow us to do past payments and they allow us to shift our timelines, it is possible this can be restored to the general fund, but we cannot make any guarantees of it. So as of right now, it's going to have to come from the general fund reserves. So here is your overview of your general fund expenses by department. So again, you'll see the variances on the far right-hand side. So those are all the additional requests that we're making. I have added in the transfer from general fund reserves to Measure A. So you'll see the total request to the general fund reserves is $777,000. And this will give you a synopsis. Is our general fund revenues. There's an additional almost $412,000 in revenues. General fund additional expenses is $250,000. Transfer to Measure A is the $526,000. So the net to the general fund is taking almost $366,000 from our general fund reserves. That number isn't as high as the $777,000 because it is being offset by the estimated increase in general fund revenues. And then you'll see our general fund net position. The really, really good news that we had is with our financials, they are still technically considered unaudited until the CAFR is printed. But with additional revenues that we did receive at the end of 15-16, we had about $400,000 extra in revenues that we were not anticipating, about $200,000 from property taxes. Again, that goes back to the same thing as people are selling their houses. They're being reassessed at a higher value, so we get additional property taxes in. In addition, if people do remodels, rebuilds, higher property values, again, we get additional revenues. So that was about $200,000, as well as sales tax came in about $200,000 greater than we expected. So the good news is the general fund balance that we are estimating as of the end of last fiscal year is $3.4 million. You'll see our estimated revenues, our new estimated revenues are a little over $11 million. Our estimated expenses are about $11,100,000. Use of reserves for the SRF payment is $526,000. So that leaves our estimated reserves for the end of this fiscal year at $2.7 million, which is right at 25% of our reserve, which this is the first time I've ever seen this happen since I've started here. And it's very much a test to Measure D, as well as departments really controlling their spending, as well as some additional revenues that we were not anticipating coming in. Did you have a question?
The reserve is 25% of general fund.
It's 20. So how we get our estimated reserve percentage, we have right now an unofficial policy of a 25% reserve, so we're right at that. And what it does, it takes the ending balance and I believe it's the ending balance divided by what the expenses are, and that will give us what the reserve level is.
Understood.
This is what I alluded to earlier regarding our general fund long-range financial forecast. This is a baseline of our net operating revenues. So you'll see with the passage of Measure D, we are looking a little bit better. As stated earlier, we do feel like our baseline is optimistic, and the optimism, again, is due to we're not sure what it's going to look like with Los Alcobas coming online, as well as other hotels and other communities, if we're going to see an offset in some of our occupancy rates for our other hotels going down. But what you'll see here is we do show in fiscal year 15, we did dip into reserves. We had more expenses than revenues of about $800,000. So for fiscal year 16, we had more revenues than expenses of about $800,000. Fiscal year 17, you'll see that $700,000, which is a $777,000. And then in fiscal years 18 through 26, we go out 10 years on this. You'll see the numbers that you'll see, the 1.8 million, the 1.8, the 1.2 million. That will show you how much excess revenues over expenses. So all the money that we take in for general fund, all the money we go out, this is what the excess is. So you'll kind of see what we're trending. There are some pretty big assumptions on this. One of the other big factors that is an unknown to us at this time is our PERS rates that we're going to have to pay. PERS did come out in December. They had a meeting stating that their rate of return was less than what they anticipated. So every year what they do is they do valuations for cities, counties, STRS, is everyone that's within that public retirement system. They do their estimates on how much of rate of return they think they're going to get on our investments. They did come out in December stating that they had a lower rate of return than anticipated. So the trickle-down effect for that is based on what their rate of return is. They have to look at how much they are going to have to adjust the cities, counties, whoever's involved, pays into STRS for the unfunded liability, and basically the unfunded pension liabilities. So we did get some preliminary numbers from them. Even PERS themselves has said, don't go on this, don't base your forecasts on this because we don't know. However, this takes into consideration what they've given us. We're looking at a potentially 30 to 35% increase in our PERS rates for next fiscal year. Everything we've received from PERS is we're not going to know actual numbers until August, so we have to do our best guesstimates on what we've received to date. This does take into consideration for the first 5 years. It's approximately a 30 to 35% increase in our PERS rates. The last 5 years, assuming that they are going to have the unfunded liabilities under controls, then we dropped it down to a 5%. So these are just projections. This is going to vary a lot, and I just want to make you aware of that these are not hard and fast numbers. We're going off of assumptions that even PERS is telling us we can't control it, we don't know what it is.
Is there a dollar amount of the PERS that you're giving a percentage? Is there a way to translate that into dollars, or is that?
We do have the dollar amounts. I don't have the information on hand,
okay.
But it definitely ranges, from public safety to, public safety costs for PERS are higher than, regular PERS members. But it really does range on what category that you're in, how much we have to pay out.
Okay.
But in general, my memory is that our PERS contribution is about 9% of the general fund budget. And so an increase that you're talking about is no small number. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. And in addition, one of the other things that just the baseline, this does not account for any capital projects that have to be, general fund monies have to be used. We do have Measure T that's going to be coming online in fiscal year 18. I believe I'll get our first payment in 19. But there are matching funds that are required from the general fund. So this does not take into account any of that. So while I'm very happy about the blue, that is very exciting for us, we do have a lot of other considerations to take into place.
Mm-hmm.
So any other questions on general fund before I move on to the water fund? Okay. As the mayor says, seeing none, I will move on. So the water fund revenues as of December 31st, you can see our adopted budget was $3.7 million, almost $3.8 million in our water fund revenues. Our actual collected to date is $2.1 million. We have collected 57% to date, so we are on track with what our original projections were. We have updated the projections to almost $4.6 million with a variance of $793,000. And this is for the $790,000 is due to the adoption of Resolution 2016-163, which was an increase in our water rates. So we have factored that in for the rest of the fiscal year. And it's also a very small revenue increase of $3,000 for leak adjustments that will be transferred from the general fund. Our overview of our expenses for the water fund, we've broken them down into administration, which is all the other departments that kind of do things for the water fund, which include finance, which includes city council, public works administration. That's all lumped into the administrative category. Then we have our water distribution, Stonebridge wells, and water treatment plant. So you'll see the variances. And right now we're running on target with the exception of administration, and that is due to, you'll see at the bottom, an increase of $135,000. And this is for litigation costs that are associated with the challenge to the city's operation of the Bell Canyon Reservoir. So we are asking for an increase, again, for IT, that I made mention of that earlier, the attorney costs for the litigation costs, and in talking with Tom's office, that is what we've paid so far, as well as what we anticipate through the rest of this fiscal year. There is a $3,500 increase for the water treatment plant, and that's to cover necessary overtime costs that the plant has incurred. So you'll see we are asking for an additional $139,000, almost $140,000 from the water fund balance. So again, this is a summary of our water fund revenue and expenditures. Water fund revenues, the variance is $793,000 because of the increase in the water rates. Our general fund expenses is $138,000. So the net to the water fund is actually positive $655,000. And I do want to point out as well, you can see in the projected, the water fund revenues are $4.5 million. The water fund expenses are $5.3 million. So overall, we still are not bringing in as much money to cover just our operating expenses from our revenues. So the water fund net position, this is including our net pension liability. Showing net pension liability in our financials is new to the state of California. GASB 68 came out 2 years ago. Last fiscal year was the first year that we had to reflect this in our CAFR and in our financials. So we collectively in the finance world, we are trying to figure out the best way on what best practices are for including these expenses. And I've surveyed my other finance directors, I've surveyed other people, and everyone is same position we are. We don't know how to show it. What are you doing? So I am presenting it both ways so you can see what difference the net pension liabilities will make. So this includes our net pension liability. You'll see our estimated water fund balance at the end of fiscal year 16 is $3.8 million. Our estimated revenues is 4.5, almost 4.6 million. Our estimated expenses is 5.3 million. So that will leave our estimated balance of $3 million, which is 57% of the reserves. So while that looks good, I want to make sure everyone is very clear that this year we had to take $1.4 million from our basically leftover cash in the water fund. It's looking a little better with the passage of the rates. However, that is not sustainable. And that also, that 57% has no bearing on our debt covenants. And I'll review that at the meeting at the end of this month when we talk about what our debt covenants are and what those mean. So they're two separate issues. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. The second, you'll see the net position. If we don't include our net pension liability, definitely looks better. It starts out at $5 million as opposed to the 3.8. Revenues and expenses are the same. The estimated ending balance is the $4.3 million. So that leaves our estimated reserve percentage at 80%. The difference between the two, the easiest way I can think to explain it, is that if you purchase a house and you have a balance on your loan, that is what our net pension liability is that we have to show on our books now for our enterprise funds. For the general fund, it is not a requirement because we have two separate standards that govern what shows up in our financials and what's reported in the financials. So there's a different set of standards for the enterprise funds versus the governmental funds. So that's why you don't have two of these charts in the general funds. But for the water fund, excluding net pension, it's basically if you have a balance sheet for your own personal finances, this wouldn't show the balance that you owe on your house because you don't have to pay it all at one time. So that's what the difference is in the two net positions. Hopefully that can explain it a little easier. There was a question that I had regarding some information that Catherine Hansford had in her rate study as far as the net position. And the net position, she did use this $5 million, so not including the net pension liability. However, her ending balance of $525,000, I was unclear. I have reached out to her and I'm waiting to hear a response. I was hoping to hear back before the meeting or before I got to my section of the meeting to find out her $525,000. I don't know if she took into consideration potential projects based on some of the emergency measures, the measures that were put in place, basically the mandates that we have to do. I don't know if she took that into consideration, and I'm waiting to hear back from her on that. So I can't explain that difference. As soon as I have that information, I will definitely pass it on to you. Any questions on the water before I move on to wastewater? Okay.
Well, I would only say that certainly my understanding from the rate study is that significant cash is being moved to complete the funding for Upper York Creek Dam. I mean, that's stated in the rate study.
And as soon as I get clarification, I was hoping to be able to have a concrete answer for that. Unfortunately, I do not. And then there is also a chart in her graph, and it was actually showed earlier today, that has to do with the where it shows the revenues being collected and then the sharp decrease in the in the amount of cash that we have to pay for it. That not only included our water cash balance, it also includes the amount of money that we have in our CIP already allocated to our CIP budget. So it combines those two. So for our wastewater fund, similar to the water fund, you'll see a trend here. We have our adopted budget of $2.1 million for our revenues. Actual is a little over $1 million. 47% has been realized to date, so we're pretty much on track. With the adoption of the new rates, we are increasing $390,000 for the rest of the fiscal year. Our expenses, again, for administration, it's at $1,400 for additional IT needs. The other amount is an increase in our wastewater treatment plant budget of $36,500. So it's a total amount that we're asking of almost $38,000. The wastewater treatment plant, the budget increase is $30,000 is for a temporary operator at the wastewater treatment plant, and that's to help do an assessment, and Erica can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but is to help do an assessment of our wastewater treatment plant to tell us what our needs are. Okay. And then the other is $6,500 for additional overtime costs associated with staff resignations, as well as we did have a lot of overtime costs with the less storms that we had, and with the new storms that are coming up, that just adds to the amount of time that people have to be. We always have to have an operator at the wastewater treatment plant, but we had additional things that we had to take care of during the storms. So again, this is a summary. So you'll see our wastewater fund revenues projected at the end of the year is 2.5. Our wastewater expenses is 2.1. So this one we also have a positive variance. So an increase in revenues offset by a small increase in expenses. It is net positive to the water fund of $352,000. The wastewater fund net position, again, we'll have two of these charts. You'll see if we do include the net pension liability, we are at a deficit at the beginning of this fiscal year. You'll see our revenues and our expenses. So our estimated balance is $348,000, which is 11%. Again, for the water wastewater funds, this is hoping that we don't have anything catastrophic that happens. We have leaks. We have different things that we do need to address on a very, very timely manner. If we have one failure, it could be catastrophic to both of these systems. Again, wastewater fund, a net pension, if we take out the net pension liability. So here is, Jeff, you asked about how much the net pension liability. Here you can see it's an $800,000 swing for our wastewater fund. So it is quite substantial. If we take out the net pension liability, it's about $700,000. Our estimated end of the year balance, taking out the pension liability, is $1 million, which is at 50%. And again, we have one thing: $1 million can go really, really fast if we have something catastrophic. Other funds that we are requesting adjustments for, COPS fund, which is 224. This is a revenue and an expense increase. So we're increasing our revenues, but we're increasing our expenses. And this is for reimbursement from Marina for our chief to attend the CalPELRA training. State gas tax of $3,000. This is for Caltrans costs for signals and lighting on Main Street. I did make an error. It's actually Department of Transportation costs. This isn't for the new Grayson signal. This is everything right along Main Street that they do take care of for us. Again, this is one of those inadvertently we left out of the budget this year. That was an error on our part, so we're just making it whole. We've always paid approximately this dollar amount from past years. Friends and Foundation, this is a revenue decrease as well as an expense decrease, so it's a net zero on it. $450 for the ABC permits, and this is for events that Friends and Foundation, they pay for the event. It is hosted at the library. In the past, it has been included in our budget. However, they are the actual people that are pulling the permits for ABC license, so this is a small adjustment that we had to make. Recreation, this is great news for our recreation department. It's a revenue and an expense increase, which is a net zero of $7,000, and it's for increased registrations to recreation programs, primarily to the soccer program as well as martial arts. So people have really been coming out for it. So it's very exciting for Heidi, but we are, and again, that's a net zero effect. So that's it for the mid-year budget update. The last thing, and this was a request of City Council, that every quarter we come to the City Council and just let them know what checks over $100,000 have been cut. The first one, you'll see that $526,000 payment for our SRF loan payment that we made. It was a November due date. And then the last two were City of Napa. That's both for our monthly water agreements for the water that we purchase from them. So staff is making the recommendations that the City Council approve the resolution approving the mid-year budget adjustments that were just presented. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any initial questions? Let me open the public hearing. Let me close the public hearing.
I don't have any more water.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Black?
Vice Mayor White,
Yes.
Councilmember Ellsworth,
Yes.
Doring,
Yes.
Koberstein,
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith.
Yes. That takes us to our final item, which I placed on the agenda, and it really was not placed on the agenda for any substantive discussion, but rather we had the goal-setting workshop, and at some point we need to hear from the city in terms of its in terms of the departmental needs, and I was wondering if the city had any thoughts as to when that might be.
Mr. Mayor, perhaps I can respond to that. I'm in my third week as your interim city manager, and my comfort zone is improving with each passing week. I think it would be timely sometime in the latter part of March to hear from the department heads. I'd like to vet some of their plans and goals and try to tie them into realistic revenue constraints before sharing them at a goal session. But I think it's very timely now to hear from the staff's point of view some of our necessary programs and capital improvement projects that they'd like to see pursued, and perhaps even some visioning that's been done at the staff level for their respective departments and operations of the city and their visions of the community. I think it's worthwhile to hear from these very talented people we have on staff.
Okay, good. That sounds fine to me, and that's really all I was seeking under 10.6. So with that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody, for sticking it out.